today. The first two weren't as large, but they weren't bad, not too shabby. We're so glad that you are here. When I had the opportunity to open up this church for this event, it didn't take much to come to the decision to say yes. I am really excited to see so many people that are standing for freedom. Yeah. And part of the reason why I'm excited about that is because you making the decision to stand for freedom will inspire other people to do so. The more you continue to comply to this government corruption, the more so it will continue. And I am sick and tired of this thing called cancel culture. But the real cancel culture that I'm particularly upset about is Christians who continually complain about what they continue to comply with. Here's the thing. If you're going to continue to complain about what you consistently or continue to comply with, let me just tell you, those will cancel each other out. So pick a side, tyranny or freedom. So let's begin with prayer. We'll have the pledge, and then I'll turn it over to Glen Morgan. How many are excited to hear from Glen Morgan? Before we pray, here's what I understand as a pastor who wasn't interested in closing his church. And the reason is because this is not our church. It's God's church. So how dare we tell you that you can't come in and pray and worship and give and serve and fellowship with other believers? That's absolute nonsense. So that's not my job. It's not my job. It's not my church. Jesus said it's his church, and he will build it, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. So maybe you go to a church that is adopting all this nonsense, CRT and XYZ and LGBTQFYZ. I don't know. Listen, let me tell you something. Man, you need to go to your pastor, or go to your eldership, and you tell them to open up the church and stop restricting the people. That's not your job. That's not your job. So I know that the church has been shaken. I know some of these, homes in our communities have been shaken. And but listen, if you're shaken but you're not standing right now, I mean, if you're 18 months into this, 19 months into this, and you're not standing, okay, and you're still shaken, listen, the reason why you're still shaken is because you are unwilling to trust God with the outcome. You're stressed out because you want to control the outcome more than you want to surrender to God. So it's either surrender to God or it's self-preservation, and anything short of surrendering to God is self-preservation. So I don't know what people are trying to save, okay? trying to save your biz, trying to save your church, trying to save your household, trying to save this, save that, the best way to try to save anything is to surrender to God. Because if you're willing to lose your life for his sake, you'll find your life. Let's pray. Father, we thank you so much for an opportunity to gather here in your name. I know that some, they're having a hard time dealing with church. Maybe they just don't like church. Man, we got a whole church full of people that started out hating church, all right? So, there's no excuse. But Father, we lift up your name right here in this place for your purpose, for your cause. We thank you that you have a purpose for our life, a plan for our life, and we are really excited to be able to continue your pursuits. This is your fight, and we thank you for being mindful of us, using us to ensure this victory for you and for your glory. Father, I know there's people that are struggling. They don't know how authority works. Lord, I pray that you would continually teach pastors and ministry leaders, community leaders, civic leaders, leaders of homes, that you are the highest authority. Then we, the people, then the United States Constitution, then the Washington State Constitution, and then way down here, the governor. And so, Father, I pray that you would speak to people and show them that when a lower authority tells us that we can't do something that a higher authority tells us that we must do, then that decision is easy for us. And, Father, thank you for all the encouragers in this room, all these freedom fighters in this room. Lord, remind them that we're not fighting for freedom, we're fighting from freedom, and that's why we're standing in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. Hey, are we just going to pledge to is somebody singing the national anthem around here or what? No? All right, ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Right. All right. Let's give it up for Glen Morgan, ladies and gentlemen.
Mike's mine? All right, it's good to see everybody here. My name's Glen Morgan. I'm not important, but I'm going to be starting out this program. If you want to learn more about who I am, you can go to WeTheGovern.com and learn more there. I also have a YouTube channel, at least for now, and under the same name. And yeah, maybe after tonight, not so much longer. I want to say when this event was coming up, I had a call from the Everett Herald reporter that called me last Friday. And the first thing he asked is, Glenn, why are you going to be on stage with a bunch of those guys that have crazy conspiracy theories? And, it was funny because I thought about that for a second, and I told him, I said, I don't know, I get up on stage with Democrats all the time. But in all seriousness, the implication of the question was that in order for us to get up and talk to you, that all of us must be in lockstep and agree in every way with each other, like an evergreen college faculty conversation or, a Democrat Party Central Committee meeting. And if we aren't, and if we don't join the Borg in unique, total unified thought, that we're going to be canceled out and censored. And, the world would be a very lonely place if we can only get on stage with people that we agree with and everything. And so what we're trying to do here is present a variety of perspectives and testimonies and specific information that's relevant to people who live in Washington State about election integrity. And so I'm very excited with both the people that we have here, with the big audience that we have here, and with the topic that we're going to be covering. Before I introduce our next speaker, I want to point out I've been an activist in the state for a long time, 11 years, very active. And a few years ago, on again, off again, I've tried to deal with cleaning up the voter rolls. And a few years ago, if I had tried to organize a group to deal with this topic, I wouldn't have been able to fill a kitchen table in our state. It's really true. If I had been able to organize a forum 3 years ago, like this to talk about election integrity, the only people that would have been up on stage with me would have been Democrats talking about Russian hacks, all right, how the Russia hacked the election, right? Because our vice president right now, Kamala Harris, was testifying in front of Congress about how she watched election machines being hacked. That was the concern there. Suddenly, all that's gone, and now suddenly a lot more people are interested in election integrity. So for those of you who do care about this issue, this warms my heart that there's that many people who are interested. And with that, I want to introduce the next speaker, because even though the pastor wanted to know if you wanted to hear from me, I realize most of you didn't. The reason why you're here is largely because of some of the other speakers we have, specifically Seth Keshel, and I'm going to ask him to come up here. Seth? So Seth is coming. Now, Seth, I can tell by that applause that they want to hear from you, not me. So with that, I'm gonna hand it over to you.
Anybody want to see me do the Rubio sometime during the water break? All right, I'd like to ask the state reps who are in attendance to please take your spots on the stage. We absolutely appreciate you coming. Everybody give them a round of applause. Thank you, buddy. Thanks so much for coming.
Let me hand me the mic. Introduce me and hand me the mic. Thank you, one and all, for being here. You patriots, one and all, thank you for filling the house. I want to hand the mic to my fellow colleagues. We're state representatives down in Olympia. I want to let them briefly introduce themselves. I wanted you to know they're in the crowd. You're not alone. You have representatives in Olympia that care about this issue, and we're fighting on your behalf every day. Go ahead.
I'm State Representative Bob McCaslin from Spokane Valley. I was a kindergarten teacher for 20 years, and I figured those skills transfer really well. We deal with the same behaviors.
I'm Vicki Kraft. I'm state representative. I'm state representative down out of Southwest Washington, around the Vancouver, Washington area, Clark County. And I think Seth has a little bit to say about Clark County, maybe here today. But I just want to tell you how awesome it is to be up here with all of you patriots. There are more of us than there are of them. So keep up the fight.
Okay, I'm Rob Chase, also from the 4th District. Bob McCaslin is my seatmate. I'm trying to fill the shoes of Matt Shea, and hopefully I can. And I'm here, well, first of all, I forgot, Brad Clippert was going to be here, but he's got to do police duty in Kennewick today, otherwise he'd be here. He wanted me to tell you that, but I'm here. I'm here to listen to everything everybody has to say, the presenters, but also to listen to you and go back to the 4th District fully informed. Thank you.
And I'm State Representative Robert Sutherland, right here, the 39th District. Welcome! Let me proudly introduce someone who's been relentless on this issue, traveling the nation. My good friend, Seth Keshel, is up here to explain what he's been able to discover. Let him introduce himself and what he has, because I'll hack it apart. Seth Keshel. Thank you, everyone.
Well, like you said, I am Seth Keshel, and I am a salesman from Texas. Thanks for having me in. So I made my first visit to your beautiful state in 2007 one step before I became commissioned in the Army as an officer. We had an assessment course here called Warrior Forge at what was then called Fort Lewis. Now I guess they call it Joint Base Lewis McChord. So that was not a really enjoyable trip here, as opposed to some of my other ones like last month when I was driving through a part of your state I'd never been in. And we're talking about the north central part up there near the Cascades. And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, you guys really have got to stop leaving these kind of states and start saving these kind of states. Right? So we're gonna do a little bit, and when things go wrong, we're gonna blame the heat. I'm gonna try not to walk off the stage because I like to walk around. So if anybody sees me go keeling over, come pick me up. Caleb back there, we're just gonna have to do this manually, given that our clicker's not working. But with that said, who is here from out of state? Anybody come from out of state? Anybody come from the Far East? I know we have the rep from Spokane here. Anybody coming from Canada? I kind of doubt that. Look, I appreciate every one of you. This is the highlight of my trip, is to see so many people coming out to take part in what's going on locally. Because without local people, local boots on the ground, all this is for naught. So I came in here when I landed at SeaTac today. Whenever you go into a New Mexico or a Washington or a Maryland from a place like Texas, you get these notifications that says, swipe for notifications from the Washington Department of Health for COVID. Well, in no uncertain terms, let me tell you, I don't care. Because there's nowhere else that I'd rather be than with people who are involved like you are, that care. Just like Glen said, he didn't have anybody that cared about this stuff 4 years ago. Now, everybody cares about it because it was delivered right into your living room on November the 3rd. And it's something we're never going to forget. And this is boiled down. What we're going to talk about today is stuff for you locally. Now, my apologies, I didn't focus a whole lot on the East because I figured everybody was going to be here from out West, but we've got you covered. Now, this heat. Every time I leave Texas, I'm like, I'm going somewhere cooler, and then it just follows me there. So I was in Sioux Falls last week, and I saw a dog chasing a cat, and they were both walking. Right. So who's hot? Anybody hot? All right. It's kind of like one of those old tent revivals back in the day, right? This is same kind of spirit. So I got here a little early, and I made my way through the big city, and I always like to kind of look around at places I've never been, and I stopped by the campus at the University of Washington. Look, so the heat causes all kinds of problems, and you would not believe it. You would not believe it today. There was a massive campus-wide power outage thanks to this heat. Huge. Yep. It was so bad that 30 students got stuck on the escalator. All right, so now let's get down to business before you guys think I'm just a big joker. I want to know, how many veterans do we have in attendance today? All right, how about medical professionals and first responders? And I would assume an entire building full of moms and dads and grandmas and grandpas. Okay, so with that said, if you fell into any of those groups, or if you're just a plain old concerned American, I'd like you to stand up if you're able. There's hundreds of you here, all right? So what I want to be clear for is we give our opinions out there, okay? And we subject them to scrutiny. So if you're here from the press and you want to dispute what we're going to talk about, then that's your right. But these are Americans gathered here to look at truth and to see what they can do. These are not so-called, as Glen told me, conspiracy kooks, okay? These are Americans who are concerned about the direction of their country, and that's what we will be always. Okay, so with that said, have a seat, and thank you. All right, Kayla, would you flip the next slide? I'm going to say your name about 51 times. So last week when I was in Sioux Falls, this is 1 week after I was having lunch in Atlanta, and a certain president of the United States put out a press release about my work. And I was sitting there, and my phone went for about 10 minutes straight, and I had no idea what was going on. Well, anyway, when that kind of stuff happens, you get a little bit of exposure. And I went to Sioux Falls, and I briefed what I'm now calling the 10 points, the 10 irrefutable points of the 2020 election, and that is at a national level. The point being is that most of you in this room, by the way, and it's okay, is there anybody here who is skeptical of claims that the 2020 election was rigged in at least some way? No. I mean, who thinks that it was clean? Does anyone think it was clean? Because if you do, it's okay. I invite people to hear this because the people in this room agree on this topic. That's called an echo chamber. So the point of this is to equip you with information. It's not to just sit on it and say, hey, that's great. Seth came and said the election was rigged. I mean, I don't know what else you thought. But you have 30% of the country, no matter what is shown, will never concur with you. And then there's 20%, and they're throughout your districts. People that vote, people that work, people that are involved and busy, and they believe the things that NPR tells them. They're about 20% of the population. So these are the kind of people that need to understand these trends, bellwethers, and indicators. I field stripped it for you. I've got 5 of the main points. But these 10 points are ones that General Flynn and I collaborated on, and we put out in an article in the Western Journal, and now it's almost a bit of a traveling show. So here are the top 5 national trends pertaining to our 2020 election that vary from all known bellwethers, indicators, and trends. Some of these going back as far as 1892. Anybody here alive in 1892? Maybe you, but okay. Robert? No. Okay, so we're going to go over the top five points. Slide, Kayla. Bellwethers. Anyone heard me talk about bellwethers before? Is there a national bellwether here in Washington? Yes, there is. Okay, so a bellwether, the term bellwether comes from England. It refers to a bell tied around the neck of a ram leading a flock of sheep. So, if the shepherd's anywhere on a hilltop and he hears that jingle of the bell, he knows where the flock of sheep is. So it's a leading indicator of a final outcome. So Indiana closes. Vigo County, Indiana, which has gone to the winner of every presidential election since 1956, goes big for one candidate or the other. Then you have a pretty good idea how that night's going to shape out. That is because the working classes generally carry the most weight in this country. So as states become more college educated in some ways, or if they have other demographic changes, then it can move how the states vote. But most of your bellwethers are in your working class states. That's your Trump core demographic for the 2020 election. Slide, please. These are the 19 counties nationally since 1980 that have aligned perfectly with the winner of the presidential election. 19 of them. Trump won all 19 of these in 2016. Obama got them all twice. Bush got them all twice. Bill Clinton got them all twice, all the way back to 1980. There are bellwether counties that die off every year. Sometimes things change, and at the state level, that's also true. You may not have known, but George W. Bush was the first Republican to ever win without Illinois or Vermont. Now, if you think Illinois or Vermont, well, you're putting them right in here with Oregon, Washington, and California. But stuff changes. So these 19 counties, these are a solid indicator of who controls the working class vote. Donald Trump this year carried 18 out of 19. I will tell you that number 19 is quite debatable by about 5,000 votes. Some of these go as far back as 1952. Others in 1956, 1960, 1964, but all the way back to 1980, you can find these aligning with the winner. Kayla, slide. And of course, that goes on to state level. Who knows a couple well-known bellwether states? Just yell them out. I heard Ohio, I heard Florida. So look, bellwether states do change. I think Ohio is becoming like Indiana. I actually think Ohio is going to be a pretty solid Republican state. Now, given certain conditions being met, which we're talking about today. But when we put these states into coalitions, so why do we have an electoral college in this country? Because if we didn't, it would just be a big contest of going to Florida, Texas, California, and New York. So you'd have 45, 46 states that are pretty much forgotten about. The Electoral College, the founders believed that an electoral system like that would encourage coalition building. And that's exactly what it does. Slide, please. These 4 states, Ohio, Iowa, North Carolina, and Florida, this is a very strong coalition. This is white, black, Asian, Hispanic, urban, rural, suburban, unions, white collar, blue collar, you name it, it's all of them. You have industrial states, you have Sunbelt states, you have an extremely racially diverse state in Florida. These 4 states have aligned with the same candidate 13 times since 1896. So all 4 of them went to the same candidate, and every time that candidate was elected or reelected since 1896, except for 2020. So Trump carried all 4 of these states both times he ran, and in 2020. Slide, please. Primary vote. Who voted in the primaries last year? A lot of you. Oh, that's a ton of people, especially for a big, bad pandemic here. So you guys must have really hated the incumbent president to get out there and vote in record numbers with no viable primary challenger up against Trump, right? I mean, Bill Weld was pretty scary, we got to say. Right. Okay, so the primary vote. A lot of people don't know this. Anyone know how long the primaries have been around? 1912. So they've been around since 1912. How many one-term presidents have we had? 4. 4 one-term presidents since the primaries began in 1912. The primary vote is one of the key indicators of an incumbent's strength for re-election, and also, conversely, a primary indicator of a challenger's strength for the election. Slide, please. These are the 4 presidents since the beginning of primaries in 1912 who have ran in a primary, won a primary, and then lost the election. Hoover, Ford, Carter, for the sake of some diversity in the parties, and George Bush, 41. The highest percentage of primary vote to still lose the election is George H.W. Bush in 92, with just under 73%. But you can see here, we have some low numbers. We have 36, 53, 51%. What that's telling you when you have a number that low, so obviously the number now it's 73% until 2020. A low primary share indicates that your base doesn't like you. And if your base doesn't like you, they're not going to show up in droves needed to overwhelm your competition. So this is the sign of somebody in the ocean gushing out blood, sharks in the water. You have a bad share of the primary vote, you're in trouble. Okay. Does anybody know what share of the primary vote Trump had in 2020? Slide, please. Kayla, slide. Back one. Actually, no, we're good. We're good. All right. Here's your 3 presidents with landslides, Republican landslides in general elections, and their share of the primary vote. 86, 87. So you have Eisenhower with a 41-state win in 1956. So this was really funny, by the way. I was talking about this slide on the symposium, and I was over here, and Mike Lindell was over there, and I really wanted to hear him say, Minnesota. So don't make me get started on the impersonations. We'll get the professor out here to do Lynn Wood, and this will never end. What's your name? Who said? Dylan. It'd be something like, now, Dylan, you need to understand. So Eisenhower with 41 states, including Minnesota, and then Nixon, 87%, also including. Yep. And then Reagan, 99% in 1984. And as you remember, that was a blowout. And also the last time the Republicans won, Washington, 1984. So a couple days before I was born. Holy moly, what are you guys doing up here? So these are what primary shares associated with Republican landslides look like. 86, 87, and 99 for Reagan. So we already yelled it out that Trump was at 94%. Slide, please. Kayla? Right. So does that look like an incumbent president who has issues with the base? Right. Now, let's talk about the other side of the coin. So I forgot to mention at the beginning of the brief that I was an Army Ranger. Okay? I was a PowerPoint Ranger. So believe me, if anybody can crank out some PowerPoint slides, you're looking at them. So I'm actually really just saving your eyes a little bit because you're going to have some other presentations today. Joe Biden, anybody remember how the primaries were going? I think the word in Iowa was not viable. Okay, and then there's New Hampshire, same story, 5th and 6th place finishes. And then there's Nevada. Why is Nevada an important primary? Because you're measuring, especially for the Democrats, the strength of a potential nominee with the minority working class, particularly the Hispanic working class. They need that strength to be able to carry Colorado, Nevada, New Mexico, to make Arizona competitive, to potentially make Texas competitive. It's an important gauge for them, so that's an important performance, and he absolutely botched it. Then we had South Carolina, you had the Clyburn endorsement, and then you had the goal line flop from the absolute rest of the field that quit right before Super Tuesday, and he still barely beat Bernie Sanders. So his primary performance is actually indicative of very poor enthusiasm and turnout, very bad. There was one candidate who had primary performance that suggested high turnout. Okay, I think we know which one that was. Slide, Kayla. Point number 4, incumbent vote gain. Since 1892, no incumbent has gained a single vote and lost re-election. On 3 elections, the incumbent has lost votes from the previous election and been reelected. That was FDR twice and Obama in 2012. Obama lost almost 4 million votes in his reelection and was still reelected. Why? It goes back to the bellwethers. Romney had little strength with the working classes, and I'm going to show you a couple counties here, one in Oregon and one in Washington, to demonstrate that issue with Romney. Slide, please. This slide, General Flynn calls this slideology. So he'll take your printed out slide, he'll grab a pen, and it'll be unrecognizable in about 5 minutes. So pretty much if you have to read it to somebody, you're doing it wrong. So I might actually be doing it wrong, sir, if you're watching, I'm sorry. This starts in 1900 and it goes up through 2020, and it shows votes gained by the incumbent from previous election. Trump's total is the 3rd highest on that graphic. So Nixon's total is higher in 72. There are a couple reasons for that. Number one, there was a valid third-party candidate in 1968, George Wallace, who won electoral votes, took a lot of votes in the South. So you have a lot more votes available between the two parties in 72, and that was George McGovern, who even in 1972, he turned this state into the political equivalent of Wyoming. So a lot of votes to go to Nixon in 72. Then you have Bush in 2004, and you'll see it in the coming slides on the counties. I don't look at 2000 often because it was a historically low turnout election. And 2004 was the first election that got us into the level in which these current trends have continued. So you have about 12 million votes gained for Bush in 2004, and then of course Trump is up 11 million votes. That is not really, if I'm really going to scrutinize this, I don't think that's a popularity issue, like we were told. Any suburban women in here? Just a few of y'all. Okay, slide. And finally, this is one of my favorites. So I like to have you guys participate so you don't fall asleep, especially with the heat. If any of you had a big meal before you got in here, and it's also why I tell jokes. Anyone heard the phrase, "a rising tide lifts all boats"? Okay, so you would think an electoral landslide, which Biden had 306 electoral votes. It's, for a polarized era like we're in, it's pretty good. It's not 270, but it's not 380. It's a pretty solid electoral victory. You would think that something like that, taking a number of long-held Republican states like Georgia and Arizona and running as close in Texas as anybody's run in 25 years, that you might bring some House seats over with you. Slide, please. This is what happens when there's landslides out there. Reagan in 80, Reagan in 84. So big popular vote landslides, big electoral landslides. And just for the sake of inclusion, we have the Obama landslide from 2008 in there. And look at the House seats gained for the president's party. Rising tide lifts all boats, 34, 16, 21. That was a bloodbath for the Republicans in 2008. Anybody remember that? We lost Indiana. Okay, how about, before we flip the slide, does anybody have any guesses how well the Democrats did with Biden's electoral landslide? Slide, please. All right, so those are your 5 national points. This is what I'm telling you. So when the press comes after my now presidentially endorsed findings, I'm gonna run that out there until the next time he endorses me. All right. So when the press comes after that, and they want me to invest 10 hours of my time to explain to them all the methodology and all the trending, which we're going to go over here locally, just so they can blast me and blast my family. And then I say, you know what? Here's 10 irrefutable points from me and General Flynn. They don't talk about it, and I really can't figure out why. I invite every one of you to look up the numbers we just talked about. Absolutely clean. Slide, please. Who wants to talk about your stomping grounds? So did anybody watch The Office back when it was on TV? So the first 6 seasons were pretty good. Michael Scott was really funny. And the ratings go like this, this popular, it's popular, it's popular. And then Michael Scott quits, and you get Robert California. And honestly, I felt like the whole series was hit or miss. I thought some of them were hilarious, and I thought they were awful. It was one or the other. But naturally, that stops peaking. It peaks, and then it goes down, and then they cancel the series. The same thing happens in political parties when the brand wears out. So the Reagan brand continued on strong enough to get Bush elected in '88, which doesn't happen. Political parties don't win 3 consecutive terms in the White House. And then through the 90s, with poor representation, it squeaked through, and then Bush had the last dying gasp of that brand of Reagan republicanism, which turned into complete neoconnery, which I wrote a gigantic thread about this morning. But long story short, the parties peak, and if they don't adapt with the electoral issues, it doesn't matter how much growth happens in a state population-wise, they will flatline on votes and new vote gain. Same thing is true of the Democrats. Obama was the peak of the Democratic Party in 2008. Throughout the working class states, throughout the coastal states, it doesn't matter. Like, he was the best punch that they had organically in 2008. And since then, it's been downhill. So you may be surprised to know, just because you haven't had a really good punch here from a national Republican candidate until Donald Trump this year, I'm telling you, you're going to be surprised at these numbers. The Democrats have barely grown any votes at all in 12 years. So Obama in 2008 had 1.75 million votes. He gained 5,000 votes here in his reelection with a growing state, 5,000 votes. And then Clinton was down 13,000 from Obama. You may remember that your electoral college in 2016 had 4 electors they didn't give to Hillary Clinton. Does anybody remember that? Okay, so what does that tell you about the left in Washington, the grassroots left? They're not into the corporate brand of the Democratic Party, okay, with all the faults. So the point is, it's not to necessarily vanquish people you disagree with, okay? It's to have fair elections about the ideas that both represent. Okay, so it's pretty clear based on that, based on the issues with the Democrats gaining votes in this state, that brand has peaked here in the Pacific Northwest, despite all the population growth. Most of the counties I'm going to show you, aside from one, they've got between 15 and 17% population growth in a decade, which is pretty good, pretty good. The East isn't growing as fast as the West is. It's not as fast as Texas. But the Republicans are just as bad. So really from 2008 to 2012 to 2016, the raw votes between the two parties were in the exact same 100,000 group, 1.7 something million to 1.2 something million. No growth. And then Trump comes in this year and he says, I'm going to gain 363,000 votes in Washington in one election cycle. Trump gained 363,000 votes here. How many of y'all were part of that? Yeah. So I would call it cheat by mail, but they've been doing that here for a while. So Joe Biden, the Democrats are stuck. They are stuck within the same 13,000 votes, 3 elections in a row. Anybody want to know what Biden gained in this state in one election cycle? 627,000 votes. Okay, so those of you who make your beef about the gubernatorial race, you probably have something to be upset about. See that hat right there. All right, slide please. Now that we've kicked off Washington, we're going to focus on these 5 counties. Is anybody from any of these 5 counties? So we have a bit of a mix. The first one I'm going to focus on is Grays Harbor. Is anyone from Grays Harbor? All right, great. So you have some issues here with analytics in Washington. The first issue is you don't register voters by party. So if you followed my work, party registration is a key indicator for analytics. It's extremely accurate. You can go back as far as records are available and look at party registration trends and absolutely tell which direction a county or state is going to be going in the next election, which is why I was able to peg Florida at 300,000 plus for Trump, which is why Pennsylvania was an absolute slam dunk landslide without the issues that it had. Okay, it's the same reason you can predict North Carolina, same reason you can predict Colorado and Arizona. The voter registration rolls tell you the story. Here, you have many parallels to your southern neighbor who does register voters by party. Slide, please. We're going to talk about Columbia County. You may not know this. Maybe this is just my nerd side coming out. Does anybody know what Columbia County and Grays Harbor County have in common? Was anybody here alive in 1928? Seriously, you might be, 92? Okay, so 1928 was the last year a Republican carried Columbia County, Oregon, and Grays Harbor County, Washington. 1928. Until Trump won them both in 2016. Right. So there's a reason for that. So the Republican coalition had been largely the same for 30 years, since Reagan. Now, because Reagan was who he was, and the people that followed him were not Reagan, okay, the representation kind of died out. But before that, the Republicans had a bit of an ability to work with the working class vote. Reagan, really the last true great one, winning a lot of the states like close in Minnesota, but winning the Rust Belt with no issues. That's how you get Republicans that win Michigan by 10 points. So when people want to look at my numbers and say that's a crazy number in Pennsylvania and Michigan, well, it used to happen all the time, back when Republicans could talk to the working classes. This is Columbia County. This is the core Trump demographic. This is the so-called white working class, but conservative populism actually sells to the working class of all races, which is why Trump's performance with minorities was the best since 1960 of any Republican. This is the only crazy analytical slide I'm going to subject you to, so bear with me. On the left side, looking down at 2004, when it says D plus 12.2%, what that means is when you take the number of registered Democrats and divide it by total voters and do the same for Republicans, and you take the difference, the Democrats have a 12% lead in voter registration. And there's the result in 2004. Bush was actually pretty decent with the working classes. Does anyone know about the industries in Columbia County, Grays Harbor County? Fishing and timber, middle class, white non-college voters. This is absolutely the coalition that shifted under Donald Trump, and it was all over Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. So look at the difference between 2004 and 2008. You see the Democrats make up 3 more points in registration, and that's what went onto the rolls on the right side. 1,000 new Democrats and a loss in Republicans, and that moves your percentage towards Democrats, and then you see the results. You have a 12% Democrat margin now instead of 3% the year before, a 3,000 vote Democrat win. This is why I refer to the 2008 campaign as the last gasp of the working class Democrat. Romney was so weak with the working classes that if there would have been a Trump figure in 2012, Obama would have absolutely been a one-term president. Because when people start changing parties, it is a double flip, and it's absolutely a powerful thing. Now look, going into 2012, you see a move towards the Republican Party in this county of more than 4 points. But is it actually a move towards the Republican Party, or is it a move away from Democrats? It's a move away from Democrats. You have a loss of 1,200 Democrats, hardly any new Republicans, but that alone is enough to project that the county will tighten in favor of Republicans, even though Romney barely gained anything over McCain. The growth in this county is minimal, so you're going to have a bit of a trade-off, a bit of a push and a pull, and now you see it's a 5% county. And then you have Trump on the scenes. This is where people actually begin registering as Republican. rather than anti-Democrat. So you see a large surge towards the GOP, 1,200 new Republicans, 484 Democrats, cuts the registration to 7, and it indicates what? It indicates that this county is moving hard to the right, and it flips for the first time in 88 years. So now, if I'm looking at 2020 and I really want to know the truth, polls are useless, folks. So our friends behind us probably have people conducting localized polls, but they have a margin of error just to give you an idea of where in your areas you might have issues and where you have strength and where you need to be campaigning. Other than that, it's a propaganda tool to keep you at home depressed. Fact. Propaganda. There's a thing called social desirability bias that you suburban women are subject to, apparently, where you don't want to tell a stranger your preferences, so you wind up with a 43 to 39 poll, 18% undecided. Well, Biden's going to win in a landslide. And it kind of starts to sink in. So now I'm going to look at 2020, and I see 5.3% more towards the Republican Party. This county is almost a Republican county now in registrations. And you have 1,700 new Republicans and a loss of Democrats this time. Literally, people are done with the Democratic Party. So this is the exercise I like to put you all through. This is really kind of like training before the main event. I'm showing you half of the answers to the quiz. There's Trump with 17,150 votes, which is the highest single cycle gain for a Republican in the history of that county, with a limited population base, with a massive move towards the Republican Party. Now look at the Democrat trend since 2008. 13, 12, 10. Okay, so we have some third party parked over there. I would probably estimate that that's half and half based on establishment Republicans not wanting to vote for Trump or not trusting Trump, and then some of the Democrats moving away. But then we see nobody's registering Democrat now. So just looking at the trend, 13, 12, and 10, what would you guys estimate to be a realistic Biden vote total in 2020? Because every time the Republicans move up, you see a loss in Democrats. That means old school Democrats are now voting for Trump. So as an analyst, I'm going to give them a little bit of a bump, 10% or so for this high turnout election they say they had. I would look at the number about 11,000. Slide, please. Even though, there you go. So there's 14,000 votes here, which is over the Obama peak of 2008 with a Trump massive peak. So this is not major compared to the counties I'm going to show you, but this is what I'm looking at here. Like, this is not how voter behavior works. And the reason I care about Columbia County is because it parallels perfectly to Grays Harbor County. And we're going to click through these a little bit quicker so you can cool off. Slide, please. So here's Grays Harbor. 4% population growth in the last decade. That's only a few thousand people. That is not enough people to begin to sway the dynamics of this county. This is the raw vote scores in 2004. Like I said, Bush did okay with the working classes here in the Pacific Northwest. He was within 7 points in Washington overall, and he was within a couple in Oregon. Now we see a big push in 2008 towards Democrats almost everywhere in the country. Slide, please. So you have a falling away of the Republican Party, and you have a pretty solid gain for the Democrats for Obama. And like I said, this is the last gasp of the working class of the Democrats with the working class. Slide. So now we see this. We see a loss of Democrat votes, but then a weak Republican. So you have a drop-off for both parties, most notably the Democrats. Slide, please. Now we have the flip of the county. Okay, so that's Trump converting a couple thousand Democrats and the Democratic working class falling off. So because we have party registration trends in an equal county with fishing and timber industries in a similar demographic, similar median income, similar age groups, similar voter ethnic statistics, and we have a 5-point move in Columbia County, Oregon, a good assessment for this county, especially based on the voter behavior, is what? That you should have a bigger Republican margin and a bigger victory margin. Slide, please. And here is half of your answer to the quiz. That for a county of this size, that is an absolutely enormous vote gain. That is 6,000 votes, blowing away any previous gain for Republicans in this county. So now, before you clap, remember this is interactive. I mean, you are going to participate, and I will assign you extra work if you don't. You laugh, I'll give you all my email address. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to look. The last time Trump gained 2,000 votes, and 4,000 came off of the other side. So it's a safe bet if you had party registration that the Democratic Party is absolutely being shellacked in this county. And that, based on what you know now with a 6,000 vote gain, which is over 40%, it's a pretty safe bet that's not going to be booming growth over there. What do we think the Democrat total in Grays Harbor is in 2020? All right, so what my actual functioning brain tells me is about 10,000, but what my conservative, give them as much credit as possible brain would tell me to estimate is about 12 to 14, just in general. So please flip the slide. Right, so at the absolute best, this is 3,000 heavy, and that's what and by the way, that's what I rated it on my presidentially endorsed worksheet. Okay, but it may be that could be 5 to 7,000 heavy. The registration numbers are not there to support that kind of new vote growth. All right, so now we're going to get out of Grays Harbor and we're going to get into the growing counties. Slide. Who's from Clark County? That's all we get for Clark County? You ready for this? Okay. Hold on to your chair. Here's the 2004 number. This is the last year that Clark County's election was certified for the Republican nominee. This is Bush with a victory margin of about 9,000 votes in 2004. Click slide. Same trend is present here. You have a move away from the Republicans and a move surge, I would call it, towards the Democrats. That's a large gain. That's 16,000 in a fairly competitive county. I would classify this county not as a purple Trump flip, but I would classify it as given the 17% population growth, I would probably call this a horse race county. People are moving in here from California, other states. But the growth in the population isn't so high that it's going to show you what it's going to show you. But hold your horses. Slide. Now we see this. So this is the kind of county that has enough regular rank and file tax cut Republican to give a pretty decent gain for Romney, even though he was flat in a lot of other places. And the Democrat total goes down despite the population growth. Just like I told you, when a brand wears out, it doesn't matter what the population growth is. You're not going to be racking up new voters. Okay, so it's almost a Republican flip. Not quite. Slide, please. And then we have this. So the Republicans are kind of solid, right in the middle. I think they've got some of the crossover here, but a lot of the rank and file tax cut Republicans sits out, votes third party. And you have another decline for the Democrats. So they have absolutely peaked at the Obama 2008 year. The Republicans are kind of stuck too. Okay, so then this is going to blow you away. So the previous high gain was Bush from 2000 to 2004. And like I said, 2000 was extremely low turnout. Slide. Look at that number. So leaps and bounds ahead of any previous number. So let's just look at the other side for just a second. The Republicans and Democrats trade off votes in 08 and 12. Basically, some people said we're done with Obama in 12 and went to Romney, and then in 16 it was like a standstill. And then this year, it's like, hey, here's 34,000 new Republican votes. Let's take a guess on what we think should be in that Biden column. Yell it out. Don't yell out the certified totals. Yell out what you think it should be. Okay, I heard somebody say 95. All right, so this is what I would think, just with a logical mind here, looking at some of that third-party vote in 2016, I would think that Biden's number would be anywhere from 90 to maybe 105 at best case scenario. Next slide. Okay, so I'm even more generous than I let on because I actually only had it at 30. So I gave him all the way up to 110. So 140,000. Okay. Next slide, please. Anybody from Pierce County? This is even better than Clark County. Okay, you have the same thing, except it's a little bit more left-leaning because you have the capitals there, right? Okay, just checking to see if y'all are listening. So look, so here's an 8,000 vote Democrat county. Slide, please. Okay, then we have this. We have the big Obama boom in 2008. That's organic. That is generally the gold standard of vote growth for the Democrats. This is Obama with a lot of charisma, a lot of support, a lot of grassroots support, and 8 years of political wind at his back with a Republican administration that went out on its hands and knees. Slide. Now we have the same exact thing that happened in Clark County, where very minimal growth, that's pretty much just population. So Pierce County's population growth is about 15% decade over decade. And we have a modest Republican gain over there, which is only about 5%. And then you have the modest Obama gain. So this county already has begun to be at a standstill. Slide. Now you have a slight Republican loss. This is your semi-urban Republican base sitting out third party, and you have a large Democrat loss, 14,000 votes over in the Democrats. So the Democrat brand has peaked, would you say? Okay, now here's the thing though. The media tells me Trump is extremely unpopular. Extremely unpopular. You suburban women hate that stuff. Slide. Don't you guys love it when I show the numbers like this? Right. So you have to tell the story. Like, that's why the knowledge of politics is an important thing to thread into this. So there's your 51,000 vote gain in one election cycle. And the last time the Republicans gained votes, you had a slight Democrat vote gain. So yeah, let's make the case. Let's make the case they can grow a little bit here. It's a high turnout election. There's COVID, right? COVID. So I would go ahead and say, well, what do you guys think in that Democrat column? Real totals. The real totals. Stop yelling out the certified totals. Right. Okay, so if I'm looking at this, if I'm looking at that, I'm going to go ahead and say that number is probably going to be in the 180s. That would be my guess, and that's going to bring back some of that third party. All right, drum roll. Everybody, give me a drum roll. Slide. All right, that went down on my scoreboard as about 30,000, but I would say that might be 60 or 70. All right, next slide. Anybody from Whatcom County? I never got to that Alaskan cruise terminal, but maybe one of these days. So here's your score from 2004. It's a lot like Pierce County, very less than 10-point Democrat kind of county, not completely blue-pilled, but on its way. Okay, next slide. Now you see this. So you have population gain here. You have about 15%, smaller county. McCain is down a little bit, and you have the big push towards the left. Obama picks up 10,000 votes. And then, like in the previous slides I'm going to show you, you're going to see a falling away from the Democratic Party, but because Romney was who he was, slide, not much of a gain here. So just 2,000, they pretty much trade off right here. So this county is stuck. So these voters have seen both parties and found them lacking. Slide. Okay, so now we're back to where we were. So Trump clearly lost some of the more urban, suburban Republican that may not have trusted his message, and you have a moderate, very slight Democrat gain over there. So once again, we're stuck. So we have now 3 elections in a row where these two parties are largely stuck. Slide, please. So that's a 25% gain for Trump in the county, which is the largest Republican gain in the high turnout era. I'm looking at this. So I see that the two parties are stuck. The Democrats are stuck in the high 50s and at 60. Now we have a 10,000 vote gain for the Republicans. What do we think would be in that Democrat column? Somebody said 65. Okay, I would say that the 60s, given population growth, is a safe bet. Maybe a little high, but let's go in the 60s somewhere. Slide. Okay. All right, next slide. This is the final county. Glen, how am I doing on time? I'm good? Okay. All right, here we are, Snohomish County. This is absolutely what I would classify as a potential horse race county. Translation, you have the population makeup, demographics, and population growth to support both parties potentially gaining. Potentially, that's a key word. We have 16% population growth on an already large county. Pretty good. So here's your score from 2004. This county hasn't been Republican since 1988, at least not presidentially. Slide. We have a huge push in 08 for Obama. That's organic. That is your benchmark for growth. So pretty much when I'm going through these horse race counties, this is one of the things I'm looking at, because time and population growth doesn't necessarily guarantee parties gaining votes. But we have a loss for Republicans. We have a big gain for Obama. And then what do we think happens in 2012? Just like everything I've already shown you. It tightens up. Next slide. So there's your suburban Republican going to Romney. And here is your very, very minor tick upward for the Democrats. Slide. Here's Trump. Trump has the same thing in Whatcom, where you have some of the third-party Republican throwing the vote away or maybe even voting for the other side. You have a loss now in Democrat votes in spite of population gain. So now, look at the Democrat column 3 years in a row. It looks just like the statewide numbers, where they're stuck. They're absolutely stuck. So now, these that's suburban women all over this county, I would say, right? All right, so the suburban women were so mad. They were so offended. They were not offended in the Billy Bush incident, but they were really offended on the next slide. Extremely offended. Right. So much so that there's a gain of 38,000 votes in this county. That's some serious offense. Now, what do we think, given that they're stuck? They're stuck here 3 elections in a row. What do we think that number will be? I would estimate, just as an analyst, we might even go all the way up to 200. All the way up to 200. So 180 to 200. Slide.
They're going to start throwing tomatoes.
What's that?
They're going to start throwing tomatoes.
Oh, I know. Well, so Mr. Sutherland up there says he's worried that y'all are going to start throwing tomatoes. Yeah. Or where's that giant hook that comes off the side of the stage? Right. All right, so that is on my generous estimate. On my generous estimate, I have these 5 racked up for 113,000 excess votes. Right, so excess votes, it doesn't account for any of the other stuff you might hear about or any of the cyber stuff. This is just straight up extra stuffing of ballots. Statewide, I had 333,000. But I'm low. Remember, I estimate low. I don't even know where to begin on King County, and that's why I'm not talking about it. So there's really no way to know. So there's no way the margin here was 20 points, and there's no way your governor candidate lost by 17 points. Okay, no way. Right. So the point being, because we don't know what we don't know, which is why we're out here pushing for audits. And if you're not going to get one statewide, you sure as heck ought to be pushing for them locally somehow. So look, if any of your clerks or auditors can explain this stuff, given that you've had mail voting since 2011, is it? Statewide? They've had it for a while. So this is stuff, and this is not, I've already estimated this stuff lower than anything. Like I've not given any declines in votes here. So slide, please. Is this the last slide? Yeah. It kind of reminds you of Biden, doesn't it? You know, it's got like 19 windows open at the bottom, and it won't load the email. Great. So much like the Democrat vote column in Washington, our presentation appears to be stuck. Kayla, are we good for another slide? All right, so with this, what's actually going on here? So we had the mail-in election from hell, okay, already in a mail-in state. We had the same exact thing going on in Colorado. Same exact thing going on in Oregon. And many times they fly in the face of the actual party registration values. Okay. All right, we're just going to restart this guy. I had some action items for you guys. Okay, so all this stuff is just noise if you're not going to take it and do something with it. All right. So if you don't have confidence in your system of elections, okay, what do you have? Okay, so this is something to me that is a win-win. I've had people, and like, of course, over the last 9 months, from the time General Flynn pushed me out into the Twitter universe, that's a good story. He wanted to put an interview out that I did. Am I allowed to say anything I want in a church? Yeah. Right. Well, it's the words in the Bible. So we did an interview, and he was like, "This is perfect for the middle-of-the-road person that doesn't believe anything." And he said, "Give me your Twitter handle," and the guy who shot the video. And I was like, "Twitter handle? What do you mean Twitter handle?" He's like, "Well, how do you expect me to tweet out your interview if you don't have a Twitter handle?" So lo and behold, at S. Keshel was born. And 60,000 people signed up in a day, and everybody was mad that I didn't follow anybody, but had 60,000 people watching this stuff. So look, there's only one issue that matters right now. That's it. Like tax cuts, we can worry about that stuff later. I mean, we have an election integrity crisis in this country. So, like anything else, you have two incredible issues that help you evaluate conservative candidates, Republican candidates, like you've never had before. Election integrity, where do you stand on election integrity? Because in this state, there is no punting on election integrity. Election integrity and medical freedom, okay? So we've all had our moments. Has anybody? I know for fact that there's people whose spouse is like, "You're crazy." Right? Now, has anybody else looked at themselves in the mirror and said, "What if I'm crazy?" Right? So sometimes I wonder if I'm crazy, and then I look at the news and I see the Attorney General of Michigan threatening to send the law enforcement after people who are talking about the election. Excuse me, lady, what country do you think this is? Right. That's not how my dad trained me, to sit around and take a back seat to people like you. You work for us, right? That's a fact. Okay, number two. So you need to tell these folks, put their money where their mouth is. It won't be long. I mean, you saw what the DHS put out the other day, maybe, about if you question medical restrictions, if you question the election, that you're potentially a terrorist. Are you kidding me? When I was 25 years old, I was chasing terrorists around some godforsaken desert, and now you're going to call me that just because I have a brain that can look at statistics? Come on. Right. So you need to challenge people that are like that, especially the enemy inside the wire, which is the Rhino Republican Party. Yeah. Right. So these are your elections. So if all the certified totals were right, then that's a victory because our elections are clean. Now they're not, okay? But if they're not right, then it is incumbent upon us. Some of y'all are not old. I'm not old, so this is not me sitting here saying I want to do it for my kids. Hell, I want to do it for myself. Right? I'm 36 years old, right? So, but what are we going to pass down? So Reagan said it's not passed down in the bloodstream. So we either elect our own representation or this republic crumbles in 20 years. It is not going to last forever at this rate, no matter what you hear. 106 years ago, at the start of the First World War, there were 14 nation states in Europe. Now there's 47. Okay, so if you don't think it can happen here, then pick up a history book. okay? Because there's so much bad blood now. No matter what you look at, mainstream media, you're going to see a mid-40s number of people that think the election was decided by cheating. And in conservative media, you're going to see a number in the mid-50s. So ballpark that, half the country has problems with this election still. Hey, that is more than had an issue with it in November when we saw it right in front of our faces. People are not looking at Washington and Oregon very closely, except for here, but you cannot have an election where Michigan and Wisconsin are ripped away at 3:45 in the morning. Pennsylvania and Georgia get yanked after 3 days because the leads are so big, and then accidentally have Oregon or Washington inside 5 points for Biden, because those numbers suggest that's probably what was happening. Hey, I don't know, and unless we get to the bottom of it, we may never know how Colt did or how Trump truly came out here, but it wasn't 20 points, it wasn't 10. Hey, it's tight. Okay, now finally, you guys, they all work for you. These are some good ones here, okay? I know them personally. But St. Ronnie said, trust but. And I tell everybody I speak to, and I welcome skeptics, because ultimately at the end of the day, it's either I'm right and we're going to fix this stuff, or we have clean elections. Okay, we don't have the clean elections, but look, so we trust but verify. Every one of y'all can find this material online. You can verify my numbers. Of course, I analyze it. That's what an intelligence officer does. I analyze it and I tell you what it means. Okay, I'll also tell you when the baby's ugly. There's a number of states that everybody's upset that I said Trump didn't win. Well, I mean, I'm not bought and paid for, right? We have to be realistic, okay? Which is why I afford the record gains, even though they're probably not likely. And then finally, this is my advice to you. It's never been easier to find the rhinos. Okay, so what I mean by that is, instead of looking at this stuff, this is what we do every time we get wiped out, whether legitimately or illegitimately. Okay, we're like, well, we need to get a new Tea Party started. Well, guess what? A bunch of moderates in 2010 ran and they called themselves Tea Party, and we hated them 2 years later. So people know that the drift of the conservative movement is America First conservative populism. They know that. So you will still have people coming and saying that they are America First candidates, because they're not stupid. But if you start out, instead of who do we need to primary, you need to ask, who do we need to keep? Okay, so the first thing is everybody's getting primaried. And then the second pass is, hey, they're great, good, we're good, Robert's good, Vicki's good, right? So we keep. But if you look at it like that and you checklist down and you talk about election integrity, you have a rep from Erie County, Pennsylvania, Republican, mocking his own voters in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is one of the most third world, actually, I'm sorry, Iraq and Afghanistan, I've just insulted you, because Pennsylvania's election was worse than a third world election. But you have a rep from Erie County who has mocked his voters over wanting forensic audits in Pennsylvania. I guarantee you, if you flipped over Pennsylvania, you'd find a 6 to 8 point Trump victory in Pennsylvania. So that kind of stuff isn't going to fly anymore. So election integrity and medical freedom, if you can screen those two things out, that's the only two things that are going to matter this cycle. And until we get to this cycle, there is no moving on until we get to the bottom of 2020. Right, so that's something that's not going away in 9 months, and it's not going away anytime soon. Okay, I can promise you that. So with that said, I want everybody, if you care about what we just talked about today, my wife hates it when I travel on Sunday. Hates it. But it's worth it to me, because this is just a season in life. So if I thought I was up here talking hot air, I would have slept in this morning. So, and sorry, Casey, I did kind of roll the dice on this. I got up, flew out this morning. I could have been canceled, but I think God wanted us to talk about this today. Right? So if you're not involved yet, make a promise to get involved. And if you're not talking about election integrity, you need to be in front of your school boards with these stupid masks. Okay? You need to stop disrupting the growth and the emotional maturity and development of our children. Okay? So the children are born innately desiring freedom, which is why they say, how much longer do we have to wear these masks? They've not yet been conditioned to just go along to get along. And the best way to get absolutely chewed up and destroyed is to go along to get along in your elections and in life and with your medical freedom. So I implore all of you to take a roll, however small it may seem, okay? So nobody's allowed to leave this building without sticking your hand up in the air and answering the question of, if not you, then who, okay? And if not now, when? Right now.
All right, thank you. How are you? You got your flight coming back? All right, you can see why we were so happy to have Seth come out to Washington today. Weren't we fortunate to have him fly out here and take a Sunday away from his family? Yeah, thank you. And go ahead and put that first slide up for me if you can, just to make sure we're moving ahead here. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, for those who couldn't make it in, I realize there's a number of people out there in the parking lot and a lot of people at home. If you got as many messages as I did this morning, you can actually still see this. I think it's still streaming live. I don't think they've taken it down yet at A.U.D.I.T, or at A.U.D.I.T, I believe, and also contractwithwa.com. I know you guys are filming it and putting it on completely. We do need copies of this video out there at today's event because it's inevitable that we'll be misquoted and that we'll be misrepresented. And we need to be able to share the truth about what actually happens here. It doesn't mean you have to agree with us. It doesn't mean, we aren't requiring, join the Borg, but it is important, I think, that we have a documentation of what's going on because, as you know, censorship has now become the dominant norm when it comes to questioning anything about elections. I've had multiple videos now that have been censored because I even brought up just very common stuff. So with that, I want to just start with the Washington State flag. Is that presentation ready to go? There we go. And actually, if you want to go to the next slide, because this is unfortunately, I think, where this is Governor Inslee's suggestion on how he'd like to change our flag here. And I do hope that our legislature will not go along with that approach. But you never know. He'll declare an emergency and he'll change the state flag, I guess. Go next slide, please. All right, when we talk about election integrity, my goal is to focus on Washington State. Nobody cares what I have to say about anything nationally. I'm a fifth-generation Washingtonian. I love Washington. This is what I care about. And we're here to fight for the state. And a lot of this is about establishing a framework for public involvement, what you can do to actually make a difference. To be honest, we were so overwhelmed with volunteers initially, it was very difficult for us to know how to kind of corral everybody and point them in directions that's actually productive. And I don't like wasting people's time. So we want to get people doing things that are actually productive and useful. And we want to identify the problems and find the solutions that apply here. And I want to emphasize that quite a bit because there are things in Washington that are very different than a lot of the critique and issues that you've seen in other states. Every bad idea in elections, we put them here first, and we've made them longest. So a lot of stuff that's actually totally illegal in other states, and I'll give you an example at the end of this. Here, it's just another day at the elections office. So next slide, please. Generally, when we talk about this, and I try to do this because just from a planning standpoint, there's two different basic tracks you go down when you're trying to look at elections or when you have concerns about elections. And believe me, it's a lot more complex than this. But one is the idea of ghosts in the machines, right? It's all become electronic, so there's some manipulation or problems that have gone on here, right? This was the Democrat narrative for 4 years in America, that Russia came in and hacked into the election and changed it. That was their narrative. So now you're a conspiracy theorist if you think the same thing they did, but I never saw any journalists, including those in Washington State, including the ones in this audience, who actually ever said that was a conspiracy theory, that Russia came in and hacked the election. But nevertheless, that is one category. Now, the category that I tend to focus on the most, because it's one that's a little bit more tangible to me, and it's things that we can prove and find when we're out there working, is either manipulation of voter rolls or defective, inadequate systems. So when it comes to election integrity or security. Next slide, please. And so, brings us to King County. I think I want to give an example. Go ahead and bring up the next slide. So, we have had vote fraud in here in Washington State. People have been caught for vote fraud. This top article appeared from the Seattle Times in 2007. This was about Acorn getting their workers to falsify the voter rolls. And they were paying them, $10 an hour or something, whatever it was. And I guess they didn't pay one of them, and so they turned them in, and too cheap to pay the $10 an hour worker, I don't know. But they went down to the Seattle Public Library and filled out 1,800 voter roll applications, and they got caught. And so these are not exactly the brightest crew that was out there. But that has happened, right? It's not like election fraud. It's a fictional imagination that never happens. It does happen. And in our state, the reason why I focus on the voter rolls or manipulation of the voter rolls is because that's typically what we've caught people doing in the past. The other one I mentioned here was a woman who registered her dog to vote that year. She was trying to actually protest how useless the system was when it came to voter registration because they changed the laws. And so she had her dog registered to vote and used her dog paw print as the signature. And the only reason they had a problem is they said you can't use a paw print as a signature, right? It wasn't that the dog was registered. But then when she made fun of them and mocked them, of course, they charged her with vote fraud. So anyway, I just point that out. Next slide, please. So, and election integrity is not new. Cheating in elections is not a new thing. The reason why there's so much energy and time put into trying to make sure our elections are transparent and open is that, frankly, since elections have been invented, fraud and cheating has been a human nature element of the process. That it just is. Boss Tweed in New York City was well known for election fraud. This wasn't a secret. It's not like something that just happened yesterday in America. There's serious problems here. Next slide. Election manipulation and fraud was just endemic throughout the South, especially the Reconstruction South, especially after Reconstruction when the freed slaves were voting Republicans and the Democrats were taking back over, and they wanted to make sure that they stopped voting for Republicans. And there was a strong effort, which actually culminated, next slide, in one of the worst massacres in American history, the Colfax Massacre. So, you have to read your history. In 1873, freed Republican slaves wanted to know what happened to their ballots, so they went to the courthouse, and 153 were killed. And it's worth going back, studying that history. This is not new. They didn't want them to look at the elections either. How dare they? And that's what happened. So, next slide. So let's go back to King County. Hopefully nothing that dramatic happens when we look there. So let's go to the next slide, please. I want to give you an example, and this is, I like doing these illustration, simple things. Sometimes the simple things help us understand where we have problems in elections. And I want to give a call out to Amber, who in King County pointed this out and actually caught it the first time. But this is your election box in King County. This is what they go, as you can see there, this is what they go and they pick up your election ballots at the office or at the drop boxes all throughout King County, all through the many weeks of election ahead of time. Now, I have a bunch of blue ballots here, but I want to point out something. They explicitly say in King County to put these zip ties on really, really loose. That's an explicit thing that the King County elections tells them to do. Because if you want to stuff the ballot box, literally, it makes it really easy, right? There you go. There I can add a few, or I can take them out. Now, the reason for that is they said they need to have it loose enough so that they can cut it with the scissors. This is really what they'll tell you. Now, they didn't realize that they sell these little snips here, and that the rest of the world uses these to actually clip zip ties. And they sell them for $6 at Home Depot. Now, if you wait a week with inflation, that'll probably be up to about $20. But but with millions of dollars of budget and an amazing, perfect system, right? This is the type of security that King County thinks is going to keep the ballot safe. So I call it the kindergarten ballot box stuffing security test. And that is in an average group of kindergartners, you put some cookies in here and you see, can you get these cookies out? Right? And so the average group of kindergartners can defeat King County election security in this one element in roughly about a minute. And if they're high cap, it might be closer to 30 seconds. But I just want to point that out, right? They just tip it up, and there we go. We can reach in, we can stuff, we can add more, we can pull out ballots. It's just simple. It's stupid. It's pathetic. It's just little things like this that they don't care about. It is by design, but it's also concealed by incompetence, right? So one of the problems that we end up having is that it's just like nobody's taking it seriously. How many of you knew that the King County elections were not, the elections department there wasn't going to have their security cameras turned on during this counting period? They had actually said they were not going to have any cameras on the building. Remember COVID, nobody could come and observe. It was kind of a mess. And we had to lobby them and fight them to get them to even turn the cameras on during elections. Next slide. Now, the thing that we're always told, right, is, hey, if you catch people committing vote fraud, right, Glenn, you know there's people who've committed vote fraud, you just report it to law enforcement, right? Somebody like Pete Holmes out there, who's happy to watch Seattle burn down and refuses to prosecute even violent crimes. You can take over city blocks in Seattle today, and they won't prosecute anyone. What priority do you think they give to election fraud? Yeah, none at all. And even the Secretary of State's office, 74 people referred as fraud. They even said, it's not Glenn saying, 74 people a couple years ago, they referred to prosecutors throughout Washington State. How many of them do you think were prosecuted? Zero. None. In fact, the most that we could find in Franklin County, they had a leftist activist who was voting in 4 states every single cycle, right? So the worst thing that happened to him is they said, you got to cancel your registration in all those states and then just re-register back in Washington State. That was what happened to him. That's just a wrist slap. That's nothing. This year, even Spokane County referred 7 people to prosecution for either voting for dead people or doing something else. And these are the idiots, right? These are the really dumb ones that were so obvious that they were easy to catch. And 5 in Pierce County, so 7 that I'm aware of. There's more out there. And how many of them have been prosecuted or will be prosecuted? Not at all. So there's no penalty for committing vote fraud in this state. There's 0 penalty. Nobody gets in trouble for that. Not since 2007. Even with 1,800 fake voter rolls back then, nobody really got in trouble. It was just a wrist slap. Please don't do it again. Bob Ferguson, our leading enforcement... No, wait a second. I'm going to defend Bob. He is very good at going after mom-and-pop businesses in the state. He's really good at that. He's really good at going after conservative activists, especially if you're bankrupt. That's about the skill set that the AG has. But when it comes to vote fraud, nowhere to be found, and he's not going to be looking. So then we have the FBI. That's our only other option. No, and I'm going to, listen, to be fair, the local department of the FBI that actually does vote fraud, they'll tell you that they do care, and I think that they probably do individually. But what priority do you think that agency has with vote fraud, considering everything else that they're looking at? It's just not going to be high. We just submitted a list of 200, looks like about 250 people that voted in California and Washington simultaneously this last election cycle. 205 for sure, and 45 most likely. I mean, I'm about 95% positive on those. And that's just one state, and just looking at those are all felony level. That's felony level fraud. And anybody in the media, you can file a records request. That's an email. You'll see my name copied on it, working with a group out of California. And so we know that they vote. How many people do you think are going to be prosecuted in that bunch? Yeah, I mean, at the most, they're going to have a nasty gram letter, please don't do it again. And so this is part of the problem. It's not really a viable alternative for somebody to tell us when you catch vote fraud, report it to law enforcement because nothing's happening. Now, I think it's important for us to focus and catch these guys and expose the truth. But they know that nobody's going to do anything about it. And I do encourage you, with your local prosecutors, at least make sure they place some level of priority on it, that they start prosecuting vote fraud because it becomes a poison, and it starts to seep through the rest of the system. Next slide, please. Now, I want to talk about this because we all demand, right, a forensic audit, right? How many of you would like to have a forensic audit of this, right? Yeah. But one of the things you have to remember is that just because you say that's what you want, we have to be very careful in defining what it is and who does it. Because our state auditor right here, they do audits all the time, right? I'm going to put quotation marks around that. They do audits all the time of state and local governments. And if you've ever been involved in those, and some of you who know who I am know that I go after corrupt local governments, and I've been involved in a lot of these issues before, right? And so the fact is, they don't audit, not in the way you imagine it. Every single piece of fraud, with very few exceptions in the state, every time they've caught somebody, though that government passed the audit, the quote audit, with flying colors, sometimes for decades, while the fraud was going on. They don't catch fraud with their audits. It's usually somebody getting divorced, somebody went on vacation, or somebody turned somebody in, a whistleblower. It's just or they accidentally do. I mean, you can make an accident and catch it. Mostly it's about see no evil, hear no evil, find no evil. And that's a problem. So you can't trust the state auditor to do it. The Secretary of State's office has the skill set and knowledge of what they would look at, but they don't have anybody there that's really set up to do that kind of work. That's just reality. And then the problem is, let's say we find somebody that we like. The reality is if you're going to do an audit of some kind, of any kind, it's going to have to be a party that everybody in this room could accept, and frankly, everybody on the other side could accept. Or two of them doing it, something. We have to find a solution that people would recognize as totally transparent, and the people that do it are beyond reproach, or at least as close to that as we can get, right? And some way of doing that. That's important. But we have to define this. Just saying an audit, otherwise what they'll do is they'll say, oh, here's an audit, we just did it, and you guys are all wrong, right? We have to really be careful and really carefully define what that means. And that'll be, of course, part of their job up here on the stage, but also your job in holding them accountable. There you go. Next slide, please. I say this all the time. A mountain of corruption is always concealed and easily concealed by an ocean of incompetence. And any of us that deal with government on a regular basis, we all accept and know that incompetence is kind of the day-to-day work, right? We accept that incompetence is just how government operates. But unfortunately, and then whenever you catch somebody doing something illegal or you're filing an ethics complaint, their immediate effort, right, is that, oh, I was just incompetent, right? And that's their normal defense. Every government entity that you ever catch doing something wrong, they'll always say, well, I was just incompetent. But it's important to remember that a wide-scale incompetence can really conceal a lot of corruption. There is a difference. A lot of people are incompetent, and a lot of times they are incompetent in government, just like big business a lot of times be incompetent. But we have to remember this. We need to find the corruption, but it's hard to find it in an ocean of noise. So next slide. A legal vote canceled by a fake vote is voter suppression. So, it is. That's so important to remember because the media will try to say that you being in this room, you're committing voter suppression for daring to question our elections. How many of you have heard that? Oh, you're committing voter suppression. But the people covering up for bad voting or fake voting or problematic voting or kindergarten failing security systems, then it's incumbent on us to challenge them, and I want to keep always pointing that out. Next slide. Little bit of work that we started to do here, and we started this last year before the election. I found somebody that actually cared as much about this, and we dug into it. And one of the things we've done is we've taken the voter rolls, people who are actually voting, not the inactive, but the voting rolls, and looked at simple things, like according to the U.S. Postal Service, 67,622 people who voted last year had actually told the post office that they had moved and left. And yet somehow they voted. Doesn't mean that every one of them's committed fraud. Everybody has a different story. But things like that are reasons why we're starting to do doorbelling. Not everybody. We're just doorbelling the ones who clearly stand out on that list that are worth going up and talking to. And I'm going to be happy to introduce shortly when I'm finished the next speaker who's going to talk about how that doorbelling's going and what we're finding, what he's finding. But that's an example. Not just that. There's another 20,000 that, according to the post office, there's no way to deliver the ballot, right? There's no there. Now, I don't know how they voted, but 20,000 people, the post office said they can't find or deliver the ballot to them. Somehow they voted. It's a little more than that. But so there's other lists like that. Many people voted twice. People that have been signed up and registered by the Department of Licensing that were not U.S. citizens. How many of you have seen those photos of people getting 7 or 5 or 6 ballots? Right? I mean, there's problems. Those indicate problems. Another thing, just as a little example, this doesn't indicate vote fraud. It just indicates sloppiness. 32,939 people who are considered active voters, despite the fact that they've never voted, and many of them since the 90s. And under our law, if the law is being followed, they would have been put into at least inactive voter status. And yet they're still there listed as an active voter. Next slide. So again, I'm just going to close on one example before I introduce the next speaker. A lot of things I said in the beginning should be illegal, or we would think they'd be illegal, but in our state, they're perfectly legal. Let me give you an example of something that would be perfectly legal, as absurd as it is. So I love Washington State, and I'd like to convince a lot of my liberty and freedom-oriented friends from around the country to come here, right? And let's just say I'm a really good salesman. I'm going to take the next 1.5 or 2 million of my best friends who live in Texas and Idaho and Wyoming and California, right? Because it's kind of hopeless. So come on up to Washington and move here, right? And let's just say they all want to move up here next October. Or August, maybe a little early. Enjoy the weather like this. And but housing's expensive, so they don't want to come up and buy a house. So they can all declare legal residency wherever they want. Maybe starting with Pike Place Market. That could be their legal residency for a lot of them, where my great-great-grandma used to sell flowers 100 years ago. So let's start there. And or maybe it's Green Lake, or whatever other park you want to have, and you can declare that as your residency. In our state, just to make it easier, once you've registered to vote here, we'll send you your ballot back to your old address in your state, because we like to do that. And you don't even have to pay postage when you go to mail it in. And then that next election cycle comes around, and wow, suddenly we've got an extra 1.5 or 2 million freedom-loving oriented that had never even bought a house. But they can all vote. And they all vote, and they flip every single legislative seat and every single congressional seat and every single statewide office. They all flip. And then a couple days after the election, they move home. They could literally flip the whole state. What I've just described to you, there's not an element of vote fraud in that at all under our laws. That's absurd. And I don't even have to make a homeless junkie camp with a bunch of garbage there, right? They could just declare it, and that's their legal residence. That is an absurd element in the law that opens us up to all kinds of mischief. But I'm not saying I'm doing that, by the way, but I'm just saying that that might be considered a legal violation, so I'm not saying I'm doing that, but I'm saying that could happen, and that's ridiculous. We don't want to live in a state where it's so loosey-goosey like that, where the laws are so bizarre, that it allows you to create absurd situations, and we know it's wrong, you know that's wrong, and yet it's still legal. So there's a lot of work we have to do to fix and clean up the system. And talk about somebody who has done a really good job working and cleaning up the system. It's going to be my honor. I want to introduce Bill to come on up here. And Bill, tell us what you're doing. Bill. So Bill Bruch is from Skagit County. I'll let him tell a story and what it's like to actually be on the ground, making a difference, and documenting the truth. So taking these numbers up here, which, again, we got them from government agencies, right? How competent do you think the post office is, right? And how competent do you think the Social Security Administration is when they give us their death lists, right? Everything's a mess. So you have to go door to door and find out. With that, Bill, thank you, and tell everybody what you are finding.
Thank you, Glenn. Just real quick, thanks for everybody coming out. Just a little bit about me for people who have not met me. So my name's Bill Bruch. I ran last year for State House of Representatives, Legislative District 10. These are the only patriots who are willing to stand up for what we need. Right now, in the legislature, I have to say it, the issue is not just in this state, other state, the leadership that gets elected does not want to stand up for election integrity. It's not just a coincidence that these people get elected again and again and again. We started finding this in Skagit. Glen called me yesterday and said, hey, just talk a little bit about what's going on in Skagit. First of all, I'm a property manager. I own my own business. I'm a former LaConner Town Council member. I am the current chair of the Skagit County Republican Party. 3 terms, 5 years. We thought we did everything we needed to win. Our campaign worked really hard. 92,000 votes cast. Our campaign, we lost by 738 votes. Over 500 people donated to our campaign. We hit every target we needed to hit. I conceded the election as a gentleman thing to do. I want to go on record right now saying if I would have known what I know now, I would have never, ever conceded the election. Never. We started doing research, and in January, Caleb, the state chair, reached out and said, hey, would you like to be chairman of the Washington State Republican Party Election Integrity Committee? I said, absolutely, yes. By then, we started our own Election Integrity Committee in Skagit County. We still have, actually about 45 people on that committee. And back in February, we started doing boots on the ground on our own. Thank God for Glen Morgan, Russ Gow, and several other volunteers around here, Bill Allen. We started working in February. The lists were not good. We're not getting that great results. Back in March, started doing trainings, started getting going, really started learning, going to the doors, finding, since March and April, in Skagit, 30 deceased voters that cast a vote. in the 2020 election. Over 50 people registered to vote at the same person at two addresses. Those are called duplicate voters. We're working with our county auditor the best we can to clean up the voter rolls. In addition to that, we found 750, actually more than 750, people that voted in the 2020 election and were registered to vote at the address, but they don't live at the address now. There is lots of issues going on. Now, this is not just Skagit County. This is a microcosm. We're a rural county. We're still getting, every week, adding to the total, adding to the total. We're going to be relentless. We're not going to stop doorbelling. As long as we have people to see, we're going to go and try to clean up the voter rolls. Now, we are working very closely with the auditor. I want to let you know, our auditor made a lot of mistakes, but I want to give people the benefit when the benefit is due. I know our people. Personally, I don't think the auditors, the issues are happening in our state. I believe there's not happening inside the room. They're trying to follow the rules, but where it's happening is in the ballot box stuffing, and in other areas around the county, it's worse than others. We're finding issues like, give you a couple examples. Number one, I voted in LaConner, where I live, in a drop box where I always vote, in across the street at the library. My vote got tabulated and it was credited to an Anacortes drop box. Now, how does that give you any type of confidence that if that happened, how do I know my vote was counted properly? As God is my witness, I met a U.S. Postal Service at the mailbox. He told me his story. He said they stole my vote and they stole my mom's vote. I said, what are you talking about? He said, we went online and we read, we know we voted, where we voted, and it wasn't where they said we voted. And his face was like, just like a ghost. He was so depressed. I said, can I get your, and he gave me his name. So we're working on these issues, and I can tell you, as chair of the county party for 5 years, inevitably, always before election, we get many, many, many calls about, hey, I never got my ballot, or hey, I got 2 ballots. And it's like dozens and dozens of calls, like clockwork, before every election. Now, how can that be? So before we said, call the auditor, call the auditor. Now we're starting to be more proactive, and what we're saying is take pictures, record this, bring this in. It's going to be up to the people, because the people that are in power don't really have any incentive to change anything. And the people that are in the auditor's office, they just shrug their shoulders and say, look, we're following the rules. The RCWs, for any of you that looked at election integrity, look up Article 29A in the RCWs and WACs. Secretary of State Wyman basically refers to those, say, hey, there's nothing we can do. We got to change the legislature. The county auditors, we've been fighting relentlessly for election audits, forensic audits in various counties. Also, we get rid of the mail-in voting and resolutions like that. And we're being told by our state party that they need to consult with Kim Wyman, the resolutions committee, but first. So when we give them our resolutions, they come back gutted. So there's a problem in this system in that a lot of evidence out there that these people keep getting elected all across the county at higher levels, all across the state at higher levels, and all across the country. And many, 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 I know Seth can vouch for this, Texas, all of the other states have issues. Colorado, New Mexico, the same problem. Now, how could that be? Well, maybe that's what Seth's talking about is true. Maybe what Dr. Frank is talking about is absolutely true. So the only way to validate it is to do canvassing that we have found, and we have been doing this relentlessly. Now, in Skagit, I can tell you, we have a long way to go. But as far as all of the other counties, we have on the state committee, so we're a very serious committee. We have 52 right now, plus people on the Washington State Republican Party Election Integrity Committee, and we have 32 counties representing. We're doing everything we can to get the counties going. We're putting together election integrity manuals. We're trying to make it a priority. Next week in Spokane, I'm delivering a report to our state committee. There are people on our state committee that want to abolish the Election Integrity Committee. That is a problem. Now, I don't want to say any names. Luckily, there's not that many, but there are more than one. I kid. first, I better not say it. Well, talk to me afterwards. Yeah. I may run again. Go ahead.
My name is Tim Tooker. I'm the PCO, the 25th of the 285th, down in Puyallup, Washington. They won't tell you, but you look at the scared look in their eyes, it's because it's the mainstream Republicans of Washington. If you go onto their website, you will know exactly who the rhinos are in the state. Kim Wyman is a mainstream Republican, right? Look at the cloud. Stop being scared. Speak the truth. God will defend you.
Thank you. Thank you. People that know me, I'm a believer and absolutely believe in God. That's why I ran last year. I was assured I was going to win. God told me I'm going to win, win, win. Guess what? I think I did win. That's what I'm finding. So, and I may run again. But we need to work with everybody, and we need to have the light bulb come on in their heads. We have to have these people start looking at the data. I commend so much Vicki, Kraft, Robert Sutherland, everybody up on stage. It's very, very important. We got to get this evidence out, and without canvassing, it's very hard to prove. In Skagit, real quick, I know I got just one more minute. Skagit County, it's really, really important. Emphasize this. Lots of people, when we're going to the door, they don't live there. They haven't lived there in many, many years. Think about that for a minute. They voted in the 2020 election. These people voted. They're registered to vote, and they haven't lived there for many years. We had several addresses with many different people registered to vote. Anywhere between 8 and 12 registered to vote at an address, more than a half a dozen of these where they don't exist. Vacant lots, gas stations, commercial properties. So we need to keep the fight up. We got to be relentless. Doug Ralston is over here. Stand up, Doug. Chair of Snohomish County Republican Party. We have a lot of good patriots in this county. We need to start doorbelling and canvassing. Afterwards, we need to start getting more canvassers. We'd be help set up trainings. Anything we can do to help facilitate this. Thank you.
All right. Please join me in thanking Bill and all these other people. They deserve, yeah. Sorry, I got my camera there. I always take pictures. But it's an unglamorous, very thankless sort of work to go out there day after day on the weekends, going up to homes all over their county, all over your community, and going with somebody else. We always have two people go at the same time to document what's actually going on. And it's hard, unglamorous, thankless sort of work. But it does start, it's one way for us to get to the truth. Dave Griffith, are you here? All right, there's Dave. Dave's, if you want to sign up, other than I think it's Snohomish County, Doug would be the best person to go to. But Dave, we have some sign-up sheets. It's not because we're trying to build some big operation in the state. We just want volunteers. That's what we need, not money. We need volunteers who are capable and willing to go, just door to door. And you know, not be offensive, be friendly, and you're going to find the same thing that I think Bill found, that most people are really happy that somebody cares. And somebody's going up and asking these questions. And, you know, the significance there is that if the delta of problems that we discover in a given precinct or a given race exceed the margin of victory in that election for that area, then there's something wrong. How many of you saw just 2 days ago, they just prosecuted a city council member and some other people down in California for committing vote fraud? Now, I want to point out what it was. The guy won his race with 1 vote. And it turned out he had faked 4 voters at his house, right? And they just caught him. Now, I mean, he had to have been a total idiot to get caught in California. But still, you know, this stuff happens. It's not a fiction. It's not imagination. It does happen. It happens here just like it will in New York, just like it will anywhere else. But it's up to us to find the facts. It's not good enough for us to sit back and just, you know, rail at the heavens, but not do anything about it. You have to go out and take productive steps. So Dave Griffith, raise your hand. Actually, Dave, take that sign-up sheet and going back, so if people want to sign up now or later, they can go to you and get signed up. We have walk sheets produced for almost every county in Washington State, and we have lists, and we're going to keep adding to them as we find more reasons. And Dave can collect your signature. We'll put you in touch with whoever's in charge of that county, and if there's nobody there doing it already, we'll assign you to that task. So, and with that, though, it's not all. Amber, I'm going to ask you to come on up here, and I'm going to have Amber just be next. And if you guys are doing the hookup on Pulitzer, if you can just get that ready to go here in just a couple minutes. I want to point out that it's not just about concern about elections. And don't check out. Don't abandon hope. Don't go away. That's what they want you to do. They want you to have apathy. They don't want you showing up in rooms like this, and they sure as heck don't want you participating in the next election cycle. One of the ways you can make a big impact is be an observer. And I think Amber here, I want Amber to tell a story about what she's observed in King County. Sometimes these are the simple things that can make a big impact. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to you, Amber.
Thank you, Glenn. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out. I know it is hot, and then it's getting on dinner time. I appreciate you being here. This is patriotism right here. This is fighting back. This is the resistance. This is for real. And you all need to know that you are appreciated. I know that these folks up here appreciate that you are coming out and that you are sacrificing to be here tonight and be uncomfortable. It's an encouragement to those of us that are in the field that are doing the work. Thank you so much. Keep it up. You can give yourselves a round of applause. It's okay. So I wanted to talk really quickly. I'm the one who took the video of the election workers that were taking the ballots out of the ballot bin and putting them in the ballot box and putting them in the plastic bins with the zip ties. And I asked them if they could tighten the ties down because they weren't secure, obviously, and I was concerned about them. And they told me they needed to have them available or loose enough that they could get their snips in. And I said, well, that doesn't look like they don't need to be that loose to get a pair of scissors in there. And they said they were trained to do that. And so I asked them if they could hold on a minute so that I can make a phone call, because as election observers for the Republican Party, we have kind of an emergency phone number that we can get in touch with someone and say, hey, something funky's going on here, and I think we need to stop stuff where it is. And so when I said that, the other election worker that was there graciously said, oh, well, we can just tighten them down. It'll be okay. And so she went ahead and she tightened those. And so I was grateful that I got it on video so that we could kind of go through slowly. I noticed that when the first election worker tightened them down, she put at least 2, maybe 3 fingers into it. And so that when she did tighten it down, she didn't have to even look. She knew she was leaving enough space. And as an election observer as well in King County elections, I noticed the next day when I went in that all of the ballot bins that had been brought in had the same issue. They were all loose, not tightened, not secure. And so I spoke to the supervisor of those that do all of the ballot collecting. And his name is Steve something down at King County Elections. He was very gracious to talk to me. He did confirm that this is how they train their workers. And of course, I protested and said, well, that doesn't qualify as chain of custody in my opinion. But one of the things that we didn't address, even though it's loose and you can a 6-year-old can get in there and pull out ballots or put some ballots in, the real issue is they use serialized ties, but only on one end of those ballot bins. So they use these green ties that are metal that actually, you can't undo. So the other thing is the plastic ties, you can put a little letter opener in there and you can just pull them out. Doesn't matter. And the yellow plastic ties are not serialized, so you can cut it off and rewrite on it and then put another one on there, and it looks the same. It's no big deal. So you can basically cut it off and open that half of the bin, and anyone who has those bins at home knows that's a problem. The green serialized ties are only on one side. Not only are those ties loose for those bins, they're also that loose on the ballot boxes that they store those ballots in, that we're only allowed to see our ballots with a court order because they're in those special boxes. We're only allowed to see the ballot images with a court order because they're in those special boxes, and they're not allowed to open those special boxes. Well, those boxes are secured with plastic serialized zip ties, so I'm assuming that they probably can also be opened. When a zip tie is that loose, you can cut it and release it, and you actually have enough space to put it back on. So even though it's serialized, it's worthless as far as that's concerned. I was also informed by the election officials that actually by Director Wise in King County elections, our elections director, that it is not required in King County to have zip ties on those bins, that they started doing that a couple years ago. And so they've been asserting that we have chain of custody for our ballots from the ballot drop boxes to the election center. However, this obviously should not qualify as chain of custody. Now, maybe it doesn't matter. You know, there are no cameras in the vans, but there are always 2 election workers, and they assured me that that was a check and balance against fraud, against things happening, and maybe it is. I think that would be great. And one of the things that I think we should take to them when we say, look, we want this changed, is these election workers, if they're just doing their job, it's really unfortunate that they can be accused of doing something nefarious or of tampering with the ballots, and they can't prove that they didn't because there is no chain of custody. There's no way to know. So this protects our workers, our election workers as well, and they should want it too. They should want it if they're voting anyway, but they should want it because it protects them from false claims. So the 2 basic things about election integrity are this. Washington voters, American voters, voters all over the world, have a right of assurance to be assured of election integrity. Not just election integrity, we have a right to be sure that our elections are free and fair. And that needs to be our focus. Whether we find actual fraud or not, now, mind you, fraud can only be proven in a court of law by a judge. It can only be determined in a court of law by a judge. So we can't prove that anyway. We can't, there's no way for us to say, oh, we found fraud. However, whether we find fraud or not doesn't matter. It's the potential for fraud that undermines our assurance of election integrity, and that is sufficient. That is sufficient. And frankly, while I appreciate all of the volunteers that are doing canvassing and the incredible work they're doing, thank you so much, Bill Bruch, I don't know where you went, and the Skagit team, that's not your job. That's not your job. We elected people to make sure our elections are free and fair. We pay people to do that. That is not our job. Now, we're going to ask you to do that anyway. We're going to ask you to do somebody else's job because we need your help. And because this is America and we fight. We fight to secure our elections even when our officials don't. So we will be asking you, and I hope that you can sign up. The second part of it is our election officials have an obligation to provide us with verifiable information so that we can have that assurance of election integrity. That is their duty. It is their duty of office. So I thank you so much for being here. I hope you take that with you. Remember, whether there's fraud or not, that's not the issue. The issue is whether we are sure that there's no potential for fraud at all. Thank you, guys. God bless.
All right. Thank you, Amber. So get involved in the election process. Be an observer. If you're not, sign up to be one. We need more people willing to get out there and pay attention. There were many counties this last cycle that had no Republican observers at all. None. That is not okay. And by the way, that's not some other mystery person's fault. That's our fault for not being the people willing to show up and be there. So I think that's important. On this technical one, if you want to start seeing if he's hooked up and get him set up here, I will fill in the gap until he's ready to go. But so I'm on the B squad here of the speaking bureau for today. The only other thing I want to mention on that is that, in our state, how many of you know that we lost $1 billion out of the Employment Security Department, right? So Yeah, the most secure employee security department in American history ever. And that the director, right, and then they said it was 600 million, but who knows, somebody internally turned off the security features, and they blame it on a Nigerian fraud, system. But I just say watch which employees end up floating in the pond later on. We'll find out who was actually involved. But I want to point out that director, Susie Levine, who was in charge of that department, and did such an amazing job losing $1 billion, and really wasn't held accountable. Audits were great. Nothing happened. She got hired by the Biden administration, right, to run the national unemployment security. Yeah, I mean, so she was able to go JV in Washington and demonstrate how it's done, and now they're putting her to D.C. where she can go full pro. And I think it's important that, again, remember, mountain of corruption is concealed by an ocean of incompetence. And they want us to believe that that's just another day at the office, another botched incompetence by another state agency. And does not, how many of you does that restore faith in government? Yeah, I mean, it might encourage you to go work there, but I don't know, and how many people of you who knew that they needed unemployment checks and they couldn't get them? How many of you knew people like that? Because I had a lot of people calling me about that. Now, they were sending them to Nigeria as fast as they could get that millions of dollars out the door and punch those zeros, but they couldn't get it to you, and those emails that came out later showed that they were willfully not sending out checks to people who were actually unemployed. So I think that, we have to remember that there's a lot of issues related to confidence in government, and elections is just part of it. So are we going to be able to get this next one up and running, or just, okay? So you just let me know. You can pull me off stage. So we had two out-of-state experts here. Seth was one, and then Pulitzer here is going to be the second one. And I don't know what he's going to be talking about. But again, I want to be skeptical. If you think I'm lying or you think I'm making something up, that's great. I like that, because I think we need to challenge and look at the information, the documents that we have. The stuff that we're pulling from the field, Bill up in Kitsap, the crew out in Mason and Kitsap, or up in Skagit, the people in Mason County that were doorbelling over this last weekend, all this information that we're getting, and we're going to be submitting it, to the people and making it public and just working our way through. And it's not glamorous, it's not super exciting, but it is part of what has to be done. So I think what we should do is have somebody get these questions out of the bins. Are we getting ready to go? It's always hard when we do these remote. I always question technology. So it's just going to be us and the NSA watching this. So, yeah. Well, these questions are really good. Let's do the questions first. Okay. All right. Some of you wrote questions that you want. We're going to go through some of those questions and make sure that our legislators can take a look at some of those, and we'll try to answer some. And it's going to take a little bit for them to get this up. Are they still waiting? Okay. So does anybody have any other questions right now before we get going, moving into? What about King County? Well, when we looked in the election workers' trunks afterwards, we did not find any ballots there this time. No. I'm sorry. I always call them the Fraud Factory up there, but it's just my own nickname. I don't know why. But to think about it, too, this is not a new fight for us in the state, by the way. A lot of people, some of them, maybe you in the audience here, were involved in the 2004 or 5 fiasco when they secretly found ballots that were stashed in trunks of cars, somehow mysteriously came out. That's why the zip ties on these boxes really matter. So this is a fight, and I really wish that somebody back then had been a lot more serious about fighting it. Yes? Are they good to go? Okay. I'm going to cut you off now because we're jumping in. Okay, yep. Yeah, so assuming that Google doesn't take them down, or somebody else, Audit at AuditWA, and that's on Facebook, AuditWA, and also contractwithwa.com. It's not up yet, but they'll be posting it on that site. I'll probably have something up on my site as well, We the Governed, and some portions that I'll probably put up on my YouTube channel. That'll be testing the YouTube censors this cycle around. So if you search for it and there is no channel anymore, you'll know what happened. But sometimes they let me get away with a few things. So So again, audit WA or contract with WA or We the Governed, you'll see. And then there's going to be some others up there as well. So I feel like we're about ready to go. Just go ahead and get him going if he's going to get up here and talk.
Great ideas are brought to life by great thinkers. One such thinker, Jovan, has contributed over 500 patents to our technological world. The United States Patent Office shows that as many as 40 new inventions have stemmed from each of his pioneering patents. Today, built upon his incredible success, Jovan Hutton Pulitzer innovates in the areas of virtual and augmented reality, data analytics and global data platforms, nanoanalytics, healthcare systems, mobile streaming communications, as well as monetization technologies. Some of his groundbreaking innovations are right in front of you every single day. A barcode has long been just a bunch of lines on the bottom of a box of cereal. But today, every product, article of commerce, and even people have a unique identifiable code. Everything in the world has become interconnected, and like magic, we can use our device's camera to read barcodes and unique QR codes. A now ubiquitous technology that Jovan ideated and patented. For a long time, software was purchased on floppy disks and CDs, and it was a hassle when there was an update to install. Today's devices know when there is an update available, and then automatically take care of that behind the scenes for us. Another one of Jovan's patents that we take for granted every day. Several years ago, viewing the same website from a computer to a laptop to a mobile device always seemed to make it look wonky and broken. Thanks to one of Jovan's patented ideas, websites fit perfectly into the screen you're looking at. That's what we call responsive design. We all remember when taking a toll road meant digging around your car for loose change to pay the attendant. What a traffic jam. These days, manned toll booths are a rarity. A tag in our vehicles linked to our credit card automates the payment process. Our inventor Jovan Pulitzer innovated the device that lives in your car and the system to capture and process that message.
So I'm not sure if I'm live. There we go. I'm actually live. Somebody gave me a cue. I gave a cue to myself. Do me a favor. Give me some sound feedback. Just roar for a minute if you can actually hear me clearly, and I'm happy to be joining you today in Washington. Okay, well, I'm not getting any feedback. Great, but I can hear you. Okay, so let me tell you what's going on, folks, so you understand. What you're going to hear from me is totally different than what you hear from most people. I want to do a shout out to Seth, good buddy of mine. He should be Captain America because he called it like it is. He's probably one of the only people in this process I trust that's been close to the ground game with me doing the Arizona audit. Some of you that came to the Arizona audit didn't get to meet me, met Doug, but didn't get to meet what I do in that part of the process. I want to give a shout out certainly to Amber and Tamborine. What two rock stars. In Washington, they are the only two people that literally stayed in contact from the beginning of this to make sure that all the people like myself that were working on equal protection under the law, make sure that we have the right information on the ground. There's also been some lawmakers there in Washington I have talked to. Some of them one call wonders, some of them a few calls. But let me tell you what I see going on here. I am going to show you behind the scenes in the Arizona audit. And so you understand what role I play in this is, yes, Doug Logan's the auditor. He's the prime. When you see everything being captured, the cameras going through, the colors, how it's set up, every bit of that is for me and for what I do, which is called kinematic artifact detection. So let me give you my stance on the machines. I don't care about them. The reason I don't care about them is because code can be made to change itself, and we've never changed laws or got, ready for this, anybody incarcerated for tricking out the machines. It's happened since 1970. They just say, oh, it's a glitch in the machinery. And so I want you to understand where I come from before I share with you some things you possibly haven't seen. Number one, the 2020 election was the most money ever spent in the history of mankind in an election. $14 billion. $14 billion, top to bottom. Most ballots ever printed, most ballots ever mailed, most ballots ever returned by mail, most ballots ever counted, most changes to an election system by waivers, a lot of them unauthorized, in the history of voting. However, I'm extremely concerned with audits. Why? Because everybody thinks you can go back to a traditional audit and do it the same way it's always been done. My definition of doing it the same way it's always been done is absolute insanity. You cannot do it the same way and expect different results. And so if you saw me call out the Senate in Georgia, this was what I was talking about. And so now I'm doing Arizona, you got Georgia, you got other ones coming online. I'm going to give you a peek inside it. But I want you to understand right up front what we're dealing with. This is not a simple process. This is a war, very simply. Now, we might not be fighting it with guns and stuff, but it's a battle of a half inch, and that's the half inch of getting into your brain and making it mush. Now, I understand the enemy called the left. I completely get them. I agree that extremists on the left will absolutely lie and rob if they have to get a vote. I completely understand them. Let me tell you what I don't understand and what I do not accept. Rhinos. The real enemy in this process are those that pose as Republicans that they think you think it's synonymous with being a patriot and want to do the same old things that's always been done that never get anything done. So you have a choice to make, Washington. Here it is. The number one pill that the people want in the world is truth. However, at the same exact time, it is the hardest pill to swallow. Now, as I taught to you tonight, I taught to you as one of only two people in the world, Doug Logan and myself, that have done the single largest election audit in the history of mankind and the only true forensic audit. You'll hear that word thrown around just like you'll hear election integrity thrown around. But that's because politicians have caught on. That's a hot phrase, and politicians will be politicians. No offense to the politicians in the room. But this is not about getting political capital. This is about doing what's right. Our country was founded on an incredible piece of paper that's called the Declaration of Independence. That's why this country works over all others. Even when you're being taught that you should hate America, your schools teaching hate America, we're the country that 179 other countries want to break into. That's not a country you hate, that's a country you love. And everybody outside the walls of this country knows that. And so I'm going to let you peek into how this is really caught, because here's the bottom line. It takes everything, every technique, every tactic to do. And you cannot afford to get locked up in the political audit gobbledygook, because just like elections can be rigged, the audits are rigged from the top to the bottom. There are political favors being exchanged from the top to the bottom. And even problems we've had in Arizona were caused by deep stater posers inside, not outside. And that's the nature of this game. So I'm going to share with you my screen. I tend to talk fast. I want to hurry up so everybody has their time, since so much time's been eaten up. But I want to give you a peek inside. Now, what you're about to look at on my screen, this is called the calibration marker on a ballot. That plus sign you see on the left of the screen should be exactly dead center. That's how the ballots are supposed to come off the machine. They're actually supposed to be destroyed if they don't come off the machine properly. But I'm going to give you a peek inside. I want to let you know something, Washington. Your state perfected how mail-in voting can change elections if you know how to manipulate the system. It is your state that perfected that. Your state that perfected it. So can you see my screen? You should see a I'm going to stop my video share. I actually don't have a communication. Will somebody chat with me in Zoom? But I'm going to show you my screen, okay? It'd be good to get some feedback. But I'm going to show you my screen here in my video. You'll see a plus sign on the screen. Are you seeing a plus sign on the screen? Okay. And so I hope you are, and I should see it pop up my show. So it says no video, Jovan. Well, I can't help you if there's no video. I don't know what to do. And so, with that said, I'm going to stop my video. You're going to see my ugly mug in this session, so hold on, okay? And I am going to now try it. I expect this kind of stuff as it goes. Deep staters all the time. It's kind of the way it goes. And I am going to, as we get past the games, let me get back on and see what I have here. No video. I think they're working on it. Don't have video. Not sure why. So somebody in chat, it's not really hard to do chat. Tell me in chat if you still have my voice. It's really not hard to do that. We have his video on the live stream, but not in the room. Okay, great. Hey, somebody actually answered me. Okay, that's awesome. So you still hear me. I love that, folks. I'm a big communication buff. If you can't tell, it's not hard to communicate in these streams back and forth. And so I want to show you a video because I'm going to show you how some of these ballots are done, and I'm going to show you what you're missing if you don't look at the ballots. And since you're a state that has mail-in ballots, what good is it going to do to knock in doors if you don't look at the ballots? What good is it going to do to look at the voting machines that if you don't look at the ballots? I'm going to share something with you as somebody maybe eventually here will tell me if we've got video. Let me give you an example in Arizona. You actually heard that the state did their own audit, February 28th, Pro V and V and other ones, and they submitted their audits back. However, when you take their audits back where they said nothing was found and you look at the actual machines in the audit, the very machines that they said they audited, and you literally run the machine's ID, what do you find when you look up the service ID? You find these machines actually do have communication devices in them. They just don't report them, or they actually submit you wrong information on machines. Let me tell you about what's going on in Georgia. Let me tell you what a politician's audit is using the typical audit people to do it. You've heard of risk limiting audits? That's so there is limited risk to the politicians that allow these types of audits to go on. Here's how it works. In a risk limiting audit, did you know that actually the voting company that makes the, should we say the machines or runs the systems, they get to choose 250 ballots of their choosing. They get to choose it. And they run them into a machine and see if they recount the right way. And therefore, they've reduced the risk to the audit and proclaim it was proper and right. That's a risk limiting audit. I think you risk having to learn Chinese and the communist way if you keep on doing these audits and this stuff the same way. I think you risk missing the boat if you keep on accepting old ways of doing this. And I'm going to see if I've got video. I'm going to try one more time, folks. To see if you can do my video, and somebody's going to notify me on my phone. So I'm going to see if somebody can actually just notify me and tell me if you can see my screen. You should see plus signs on it. If you see plus signs on my screen, I get to press play, and I'll walk you through it. Okay? So, nope, do not see my screen. Okay, well, all I can do is share with you a few other things that you need to know about the system. How convenient is this? Number one.
So go to Facebook, A.U.D.I.T, and you should be able to see the live projection there.
Somebody said they can see it.
Yeah, Facebook, A.U.D.I.T, that's where you can find it. We're not going to find it on the projector here.
These quote-unquote voting machines do not know the difference between a real ballot and a fake ballot. My screen was working, I could show you that. They do not know the difference between a human-filled oval or a machine-filled oval. Let me ask you a question. If you're a mail-in state with a mail-in ballot, why would have a machine filled in your ballot from home and it arrive in a mail-in ballot? It wouldn't. But these machines cannot pick up, let's see if we got it, hold on, cannot pick up what is a counterfeit ballot. Okay, great. I think sending everybody to Audit Washington, thank you. Does that mean, Amber, does that mean they're actually going to be able to see the video? Yes, great. Hey, look at that wild communication. Here we go. I'm going to share my screen, and I'm just going to start. And if you're seeing my screen, okay, and you're looking at it, you're going to see plus signs on my screens. These are actual ballots. This is the ballot calibration. How you read this at the top, we process at nanoseconds time. It's much faster even than this. But you're looking at the heading and the amount out of calibration. They should be 100% on. That's what you want in your voting machines, right? You want them to be 100% on. Well, behold this bag of ballots. And this trend holds. Get ready, I'm about to play it. Here we go. And so as you see here, as these systems run, okay? As these systems run, what happens is you can see it measuring it. Can you see how out of whack that calibration is? 1,500%, 1,600%, 1,400%, 1,800%. This is one of the reports you saw by the Senate, so it's okay to talk about. Think of this thing as a compass heading. They should hit in the center. 11% of this particular batch of ballots didn't even have the calibration. 1% actually hit on target, so small you can't even see it. 7%, that 7% is a machine that should be retired. I'm going to go back to it real quick. That's a machine that should be retired. Should be sent out for service, that's 7%. 78%, as you see it all over the right, 78% as that whacks it all the way to the east, that's a compass heading, it prints them all over the place. And what you can see, it primarily prints them to the east and drops them. Drops them is the calibration issue. If you were looking at this pile right here so you understand it, the average out of calibration for these ballot printing machines was 1,610%. 1,610%. The highest out of calibration was 3,900%. Let me show you why this matters. Here is a bleed in a ballot. Now, why is there bleeds in the ballot? Well, if they don't use the proper paper in a ballot, if you don't use the proper paper in a ballot, even a regular pen, much less a Sharpie, can bleed through. This is where the bleed through happens. But if you notice here, you've got one vote in the green. That's actually a presidential vote, by the way. I won't tell you who it is, but you can probably figure it out. And the vote on the right is actually a vote on the backside. And because of alignment, it has moved that box from the backside down and to the east, which ends up being west on the front. Remember, it's worse, reversed. The lateral wise is reversed. So why does that matter? Well, I'm going to show you next here. Keep a look at this. That's the real vote on the left. That's the ghost vote on the right. These machines read very distinct areas on the ballot. There it is. That red box you see on the outline, the bid box, is what the machine reads. And this particular vote basically cancels itself. When you use an out-of-calibrated ballot and you do not use authorized ballot paper and you mark it with a heavy writing device of any kind, it can even be a ballpoint pen, this is what it does. And you never hear this because you don't get a chance to correct your vote, because in Washington State, you mail it in. And they're perfectly fine with it. You don't find this by knocking on doors. You don't find this by cleaning voter rolls, which is the biggest joke in the world. If you're going to wait for your voter rolls to be cleaned, do me a favor, go register as a Democrat and begin learning Chinese, because that will take too long. You've got to get on this now, and you've got to look at your ballots, and that's what this is designed for. I'm going to give you some other insight here. I'm going to give you a little bit of training. so you can look at your eyes and know what's going on. This is what we call our hemo report. Now look at this batch of ballots, and Amber, just confirm for me everybody still has this, but let me show you this batch of ballots. This is one of the reports that we give. This particular report, we produced 16,500 of them because we produced one for every bag in the mix. Now, in this particular batch, this was just a test here, just so you, a test. We only looked at 3 files. This is only 3 ballots, and the reason I can show you this is it's a test bunch. But do you see what it is? Look at that number. There's 90 voted ovals on the page. You have basically 41 chances to vote on the front page. 41. However, for the machines themselves, what they look at, it presents 136%. It presents 36 more voted ovals than there even is potential on the page. And these machines read every one of them. The interesting thing about it is these machines can be dialed up or dialed down to sensitivity. But here's what I don't accept. 3.3%, it automatically cancels because it's side by side. And this past year, they used automated AI adjudication, and even adjudicators don't even see it. Do you think this is okay? The worst instance in these 3 was there were 41 potential ovals on this page. 41 ovals. 50% of them had issues. 50% of them had issues because there's 90 there you can potentially vote. It's over a 1 to 1.36 chance that something's going to happen, and it canceled over 3% of the votes on that one. That particular one, it canceled a total of 10% of the votes. The average instance was 3.3%. We had some, of course, it didn't cancel any. We got lucky, but it was only a 26% overage. This is what happens when you don't pay attention to the machines and the paper, folks. And that's why the paper is important. Somebody signed for it. Somebody gave it. Somebody accepted it. Somebody let it get through the system when that paper was a total bunch of garbage, and that's your ballot. So if our country can be found on an incredible document called the Declaration of Independence, and I'm just going to give this to you so you understand it. If our country can be founded on an incredible Declaration of Independence, why would we let our country be undone over something as simple as a ballot? How short-sighted, nay, say ignorant, it is to think you're going to fix this if we just go knock on doors or we clean up rolls or we do this and we don't look at the physical ballots. I'm going to show you why you've got to look at the physical ballots. I'm going to go back to my screen share here so you have it. Let me know that that screen share transferred okay, folks. Here's what you have. What you're looking at right here, this is a voted oval, okay? So I'm just going to let it play. You're looking at a real voted oval. There it is. It's easy to see. These are kind of what we see when we do a full forensic audit. That is not about a forensic hard drive, nothing smoke and mirrors, a full forensic audit. Take a look at this one. I'll bop back and forth. That one, this one, that one, this one, that one. This one over here, that's a fake one. Now, why would a mail-in ballot have a machine filled in vote, and why would that machine fill in vote try to look like a human marking if in fact it was not intended to be nefarious and try to fool the system? Folks, these machines don't know the difference. Let me show you how these machines see. Because you all hear they got scans in the machines. Well, here's the scans in the machine. On the right is what I look at in Arizona and Georgia. You can clearly see its pen. You can even see down to the iron and the ink. That's why it has that reddish look. See the circles? It looks like clouds. It kind of looks three-dimensional. You can kind of see figures in it. Looks like 2 dinosaurs fighting or whatever the case may be. And you see the lightness and the darkness of the human hand. And that's because even when you're filling out an oval, your mind sees it is done before you lift your pen, and we pick up that lightness. You know what you're looking at on the left? You're looking at one of the same exact ovals on the voting machines. Now you tell me, do you accept that? To me, that is unacceptable. Unacceptable. And when people tell you, well, let's just look at the machines, or let's just look at the cast vote records, or let's just go knock on a door, they're avoiding the real issue, because that's the difference in the machines, because these machines are designed intentionally to deceive the vote. You're looking at it. I'm showing it to you. That is what the machine sees on the left and regurgitates it back to us. By the way, folks, that's the 1980 IEEE standard for a fax machine. That's the quality they're stored in the machine. Let me show you how our system sees these things in high end. This is the high end part. This part on the left, that's a real human filling in an oval on a real ballot properly. The right side is also a real ballot, but it's a machine trying to look human. Can you see the difference? Your eye cannot pick it up. You're looking at a 200 times zoom. This is what a full forensic audit is. We've been told every ballot must count, every vote must count. That's a joke. Illegals must count, dead people must count. No, it is every legal ballot must be counted exactly the way you cast your vote. Right? Exactly the way you cast your vote. Now, I only got into this because Amber and Tamborine stayed on me. We actually communicate all the time. They stayed on me. I want to point something out to you. Did you know in one of these states, the driver that is driving these suits and election integrity and get it done is a Democrat? Because even Democrats can't accept this. They think it's a joke. That's why Biden doesn't have numbers when he goes online. In your state, you know what? Who is the most educated person in the world of having an election stolen from them? Bernie Sanders. That is why information from Bernie Sanders' campaign, people who intimately understand how deceptive the system is, that's why they have to fight for it too. Here's the bottom line. Everybody knows if one party controls your vote's over. I'm going to show you two more things here, folks, and then I'm going to wrap. I got to go to my advance here, so bear with me one moment. I got to find my file. I am going to, wait, let me go back. I'm going to share with you another video real quick. I want to get it up on my screen. Stand by. I'm going to share with you something on my screen that the media told you didn't exist. You've even been told there, Amber did a great job in getting that video. Why else leave a gap in that voting box unless you're going to slip votes in or take votes out? These are small moves, folks. Small moves all over the place. These things get duplicated and replicated little by little because they know the gaps in the system. Now, they told you that these ballots didn't have special markers in them. Even in Washington, when you can literally, and I'm a forensic guy, I know what I'm looking at, see a poll worker changing the votes. I find it ironic. How ironic is it that everybody sitting in that room right there that I'm talking to right now knows the media lies. They know the media lies. But when they look at that video, they don't trust their eyes, and people come out and says, well, that's been debunked. Where'd you get the debunked? On the internet, from the people doing the elections. Do you think they're going to come out and admit it? You don't even trust your own eyes. That's how bad the manipulation in this. Let me show you what the media doesn't want you to know. Take a look at this, folks. The legal ballots are encoded. Here it is. Watch it for your own eyes. Let me know that you can see this. So what you're seeing there, those are the codings in the ballots. You're looking at it right there. See those little dots? These are what our systems do. This is why you have to look at the physical event, because these are below your eye frequency level. The media would have swore to you it was not there. They would have told you bullcrap looking for bamboo was never about looking for bamboo. They play on your mind and they play tricks and jokes with you. Do you know why? Because they think you're all a bunch of cabbage heads. They think you have cabbage for brains. And they want you to believe the junk. The junk. Right? Cabbage for brains. Now, it's very simple. Is I'm going to stop sharing that and I'm going to share a video where you can hear audio. I want to even let you know, I'm here talking to you. How ironic it is. Have all these problems at the last minute. Even videos don't come through. This is kind of part and parcel for a lot of these events, is magically problems occur. You must inspect what you expect. I'm going to show you my final video here. Let me get it up on my screen on my side. Stand by. There will be audio that you should be able to hear with this one, unless audio's been taken out too. But I'm going to share this one with you. Stand by. And you're going to be able to hear this. And this is actual video that I used to explain to the Arizona Senate exactly what went on and why, when it comes to why does it matter if it's the right paper? Why did it matter if you were identified as a conservative and given a Sharpie? Why does it matter if the print calibration is out? Other than the machine not reading it, here's another reason why it matters. Let me know if you have sound when you see it. Here we go. I'm going to zoom it up, and here you go.
This video will explain the Pulitzer Kinematic Artifact Detection Platform's PCAD Drac Drift Report.
The Drac Drift Report is a secondary report created from the data discovered when checking for out-of-calibration printing when combined with using the wrong election ballot paper stock.
Drac drift measures a unique nefarious activity that combines out-of-compliance ballot paper stock with out-of-calibration printed ballots and the use of the traffic cop soft hack at polling stations. What is the traffic cop soft hack? It begins when the voter arrives at the voting precinct, either when verifying them as registered voters or by asking the voter to self-identify as either a Democrat or Republican. When a nefarious poll worker can identify the voter by type, they simply hand the voter a Sharpie or marker to cast their vote.
When you combine the use of a Sharpie or marker with an out-of-calibration printed ballot and an out-of-compliance ballot paper, a low-tech paper hack has been perpetrated. The out-of-calibration print allows voting ovals on the backside to drift directly adjacent or astride of a key voting oval on the front. Then when this hack is combined with bad paper which is designed to allow the backside to bleed over into the front side, this is what occurs. An oval legally voted on the front of the ballot, the Drac drift causes bleeding or bleed-through oval on the backside to appear to the vote scanner and tally system as an overvote. This overvote either forces the canceling of a person's vote or forces the ballot to be adjudicated by an election official.
One added feature, electronic adjudication. Sometimes voters return ballots with smudges, bleed-throughs, or overvotes that need to be reviewed.
Some say an adjudication of a vote is a legitimate process for assuring the voter's vote is tallied correctly if there are errors. But what if the Drac drift is designed to cancel one party's vote? What if it could make an unvoted oval on the front appear as if it was legally voted? The Drac drift can give the adjudicator plausible reason to cast a vote for a different candidate, even though they are really seeing an oval printed and voted on the backside of the ballot. It is also important to point out that the vote machine scanners, which say they are at least 200 dpi, actually store the scanned image at 72 dpi and eliminate the Kodak grayscale. This is done nefariously to make bleed-through ovals look like they are actually legit cast votes on the side of the ballot being scanned.
The voting machines in precincts that use out-of-calibration printed ballots, along with out-of-compliance ballot papers, should coincide with voting precincts that display abnormally high ballot adjudication rates. Drac drift can literally suck away votes from one candidate and assign them to another by using this very low-tech simple hack. Even the voting machines in the precincts have a sensitivity setting to either flag or ignore these types of activities. Something as simple as bleed-through on the ballot and drift of the printing calibration can change the outcome of an election. That is why we investigate Dracula's drift in our PCAD systems, so the life of our nation does not get sucked away by simple low-tech hacks.
That's why we call it Drax drift, because it's a bleed through, and our nation can be sucked away with this. Here's my closing comments to all of you. There is no such thing as a certified election auditor. That's a myth. There is no such thing. Now, for the first time in history, we have audits that are done the brand new way, like you've seen us do in Arizona. I'm only skimming the surface here, folks. There are 24 different programs, soon to be 26 different programs that we look at to discover these things that can only be determined by the ballot. The only thing that has ever changed any election for any reason is finding ballots that were missed or illegal. Canvassing, although it is extremely important, changes nothing. Writing laws change nothing. In fact, some of these states are now writing laws that you got to be a certified election auditor to audit the state when there is no such thing. And that's how they kind of give it to their buddy-buddy system. A lot of this goes on. And some of the things I've kind of noticed in this really bug me as a technologist. I'm one of the very few people that's on 15 billion devices. That's more than Apple or Android combined, because I'm on them both. They aren't on each other's. They're separate. And so when I look at this, very clearly, it upsets me. It upsets me because it's so easy to fix this. This is such an easy fix, it's nuts. But what you have, as happened in other states, lawmakers, knee-jerk, write a quick bill, have nothing. They don't know anything about how these things work technically. I've even seen lawmakers drafting bills, and these guys don't even do their own email. But it sounds good, it scores political points. They think they're writing something good to score political points, but has nothing to do with how do you actually close these holes. In 1948, LBJ ran for Senate in Texas. In 1948, he had lost, knew he had lost. The numbers were coming in horribly. His election manager, his campaign manager hopped into his car and drove across the state of Texas, and in a remote precinct, he found the infamous ballot box number 13. You can look it up, folks. Google it. One of the things that's on Google that's actually true. But ballot box 13 had a magical 202 votes in it. Wow, we missed this box, and LBJ won. Now, what's the moral of that story, folks? The moral of that story is since every single major election in the United States since that time has found magic boxes of uncounted ballots. See, that's how the system works. When you find one way to get it through, it basically gets repeated. These things are broken apart, folks, broken apart. They fool you with things like air gapping. These are air gapped. When I first heard air gap, I'm a technologist. The only thing I could see in my brain was the space between Maxine Waters' left ear and right ear. That's an air gap. It's a very nefarious word for we stuck a human in between. We're only as good as people are good. And that's the truth. Technology has sped up, gotten better, faster, and cheaper, but we keep rewarding $100 million, $200 million, $300 million contracts for machines we don't need that don't do their job. I don't think that's okay. And so what has to happen if you want to get real about this? If you want to be placated, you want to hear the typical political gobbledygook, right? Have at it. Nothing will change in your state. Nothing. And if we don't change this right now, it's over. This is not about you. This is not about me. It's not about who's president. It's not about whose political party it is. It is solely about whether America survives. And we have to get this right. And the only way we get this right is looking at the physical evidence of nefarious activities. Physical evidence of nefarious activities. I heard somebody say, oh, canvass and he found votes and he went to jail. No, he got a slap on the wrist, going to have a criminal record. The fine's going to be a whopping $1,000. Do you think that's okay for subverting your vote? When you look at the physical ballots, you're dealing with a physical paper trail. When you're dealing with a physical paper trail, you're dealing with a money trail, a signature trail, and an audit trail. Those are the things that are needed to prove racketeering. It's the same laws on the books that deal with counterfeit monies, counterfeit stocks, counterfeit passports. That's a lot of reasons why these guys scream about what I do, because they don't want you to look at the physical ballots, which you own, ladies and gentlemen. You own them. They are yours. You paid for them. You paid for the machines. You paid the salary of the election officials and the people that are supposed to run it right, and they don't do it. I personally believe it's up to the highest bidder. If we're going to get this right, we must write real laws that plug the holes that are not done by politicians, but people that really do it and consult with it. And that's the one thing politicians don't do, is call the people that really know. Because they get political capital and they want to swap back and forth. Do me a favor, I'll do you a favor. That's the way the political system works, folks. And I'm sorry. I call it like it is. I owe nobody anything. Nobody has anything over me. I will be called everything in the book. You can imagine it, but I'm impervious to it. It does not matter. I only care about one thing in the world, and that is you, the United States citizen. And in this case, the citizens of Washington. That's it. I have no horse in this game, except I want my children and grandchildren to grow up in the America I grew up in as a first-generation American Jew, that I could live my dreams and do it. That if I could think it, I could make it. And that's what you're about to say goodbye to, folks. Our young people want to be influencers. They want to be the next Mark Zuckerberg, worth billions and billions. You ever heard about the Mark Zuckerberg in Venezuela? Do you know the story of the Mark Zuckerberg in Venezuela, folks? No, you don't. You know why? Because there is no Mark Zuckerberg of Venezuela. We either get this right, or the greatest country in the world that people break into to become part of goes away. I submit to you, it takes people on the outside working with the people on the inside. Always want to play nice and kumbaya, my friends, which doesn't fix elections. We've got to fix this. You've got to get to the bottom of it, and you've got to look at the physical ballots, period. You want to know how much it cost, folks? 25 cents. Think about that. When politicians are fighting this, because a lot of them don't want answers, and it costs you a whopping quarter. That's how you measure a politician, folks. If they're willing to go the distance for you. In closing, Karen Fann in Arizona went out on a limb, but she was willing to do it, to go out on a limb, because she was in the wane of her career. She was going out, just like Clint Eastwood, standing up and coming out as a strong conservative, because he knew if he came out earlier, it'd be banned. Well, now Karen Fann took the heat and proved this is done, and now you hear all these lawmakers calling for election integrity, but no solutions. You have the solution right in front of you, and I want you folks to remember that. You have a lot of good people in Washington. Everybody has to work together. My grandma told me that this, I believe this is a battle between good and evil. My grandmother told me that Satan doesn't come take over things looking all pitchfork and fiery. He's probably going to come to you with a damn bow tie looking like a choir director. You need to think about that, folks, and you need to think about what you want done. And you need to audit your audits and audit your politicians as to what they're saying, because if they're willing to take half measures, they're willing to sell you out. If they're willing not to allow everybody to look at it and they isolate people because, oh, we don't like that person. You ever notice how the Republicans fight among themselves instead of banding together? That's why the left basically whips us. They stick together no matter what, and I know they do pretty horrible things.
Jovan, can you hear me?
But they still support each other.
Can you hear me?
Folks, this is not up to a politician. The military is not coming to save you. There is no Q day or D day. This is only your day. You. Your eyes have been opened to this for the first time in history. And you have to make a decision what you want to do. You now know you can see things in these ballots that the criminals could not hide, and politicians don't want you to see, because it's very profitable to turn their eyes a different direction. It's going to take all hands on deck. It's going to take everybody working together, and it's going to take follow-up. So you should ask your politicians who they're talking to.
Okay, listen, we're running overtime. We're going to have to go ahead and cut this.
So I want to thank everybody
Can you go
for
ahead and cut
joining
the
me
feed?
today, and I want to thank everybody for at least
Jovan,
listening to
thank
me
you
and
so
listening.
much for your
Thank you.
time. Thank you so much for your time. I have a pastor up here threatening me with hellfire if I don't get my show on the road. I'm just kidding. We're going to have one last speaker, very short. We're going to have the legislators answer a quick question, and then we're going to wrap this show up. So bear with us. We're over time. We apologize. We know it's hot. Tamborine, are you here? Tamborine, what I know about Tamborine, she's been working on this issue for many years. In fact, I wish we had time for her to tell the story. She was the one that pretty much uncovered the cheating of Bernie Sanders. We're cheating her out of a lot of time right now because we ran over. That's my fault, and I apologize. We have public testimony, people that were here to testify publicly. She's going to take her story, a 2-minute video, and then give a brief example, and we'll get back to the legislators and wrap this up. Tamborine, Borrelli.
Just real quickly, I'm all in with you guys. We need a full forensic audit. That's what I'm going to vote. I'll let you go on there. Take care. I got to be in Canada.
Here you go. Here you go. He said he's with you guys and he's for a full forensic audit.
It begins and it ends with our electoral system. Our electoral system is corrupt. It is not transparent. It is not secure, I guarantee you. And it is not verifiable. So we all know what the problem is, but I'm going to tell you just a few things that you may not know. In regard to our election here in Washington State, did you know that our election was vulnerable to not just foreign interference with the Nigerian scam in the springtime, but did you know that there was a massive security breach for 4 government agencies? The DSHS, the DOR, the DCYF, and most importantly, WA-TEC. If no one knows what WA-TEC is, it is the IT service department in charge of cybersecurity of what? Our election systems.
What I would like to do is respect your time. I know it's been a long, long day. So what I would like to do is the Zoom still up? This right here. I'd like to just go to one slide, not the video. If you can switch the slide, and I'll tell you where to go. Keep going. By the way, what this is, we had a few different whistleblowers that work within the election systems, and there are quite a few things that will explain You see all these people that are sitting here that drove all this way to tell you, these 2 rows, to tell you specifically the things that happened. People that got double ballots, people who got their ballot reprinted, people who had their ballots received the same day it was sent. These are all someone who actually didn't vote in 2013 and 2018, but we have the proof there that it says they did vote. So the question is, how did that happen, right? There's so many questions that we have. So if you can go to the next slide. Next slide. Okay, can you guys see the green and then the red there? Okay, so do you remember in Antrim County, they said there was a glitch, and there was 6,000 votes that somehow flipped to Biden. Did you have any idea that it happened in our evergreen state in Washington? And funny that it's 6,000? It's been said by experts that those machines, when they glitch, do it in batches of 6,000. Next slide, please. It's not a glitch. It's not a glitch. This is just showing you this happened 10 different times. A total of 37 ballots moved here and there. And who listened to the symposium? A lot of people here, right? Do you remember hearing them saying, well, you know, what it is they see what's going on, and then they have to assess what they have to do. If they need more ballots, they get more ballots. That's why they all stopped counting, right? So what this shows you is, look at how many different times this is happening. 37,000 ballots moved around. Was given, was taken, put here, right? Okay, so you know it happened here. Slide. Okay, check this out. This is King 5 election night reporting, right? So when the county reports, the county tabulator, it goes to the Secretary of State, and then the Secretary of State feeds it, this is Edison reporting, to King 5 and all of the media. So I want you to look at the timestamp. At 9:36 p.m. and 43 seconds, the total of the governor's race was over 5 million, right? The problem with that, ladies and gentlemen, is in that moment, the registered voters in Washington state was only, what does that say? Well, actually, it was 474,000 more ballots than there were registered voters, okay? That's weird. Isn't that not weird? That's questionable. It's fair, right? Okay, so then someone maybe noticed there was a mistake, and at 10:13, 45 minutes later, look at the total. It dropped 2 million ballots. That's even weirder, isn't it? That's pretty weird. So next slide, please. This shows a King 5 inflated. So on the right is the Edison, right, meaning from the Secretary of State. Then King 5 reports it, and it's inflated. Inslee's numbers were inflated mysteriously at the exact minute, 10:13, right on the Edison, 1,100 votes. That's just in 1 minute. Just 1 minute, 1,100 votes more mysteriously. Next slide. Okay, so check this out, you guys. The total of election night, right? Secretary of State says, this is the total of the whole state. That's the first number you see. Then, 21 days later, of counting, all the ballots coming in, right, was the next total. So in that 21 days, there were over 300,000 ballots counted in that period of time, right? Everybody following that? Okay, I hate math. I'm not a mathematician at all, but I can understand this. I had to use my calculator to figure this out. But look, so the problem with that is that the governor's race total on 11/3 was one thing, and 21 days later, it was quite another. Here's the problem with those two totals. There's here's that number again. It's kind of weird, keeps coming up. 425,289 ballots more in the governor's race. Where did they come from? Next slide. Keep going, please. Okay, who heard at the symposium Dr. Frank saying that he's worked with a dozen groups or states, right? We were the first that actually figured out what he was doing from his videos, and we actually duplicated his work for all 39 counties in Washington. So, yeah, we have an amazing data analyst. He figured it out himself. So I just want you to see, go to Snohomish, because I know there's Pierce here also, right, and Clark, Skagit. There's a reoccurring problem here. When you look right around this, where I'm standing, you'll see the black line and sometimes the red line. The red line are ballots counted. The black line is registration. That peaks over the population line. So again, more registrations than actual people and more counted ballots than actual people. Next slide. They need it. Okay, wasn't that quick? So we are and have been fighting on the left, fighting on the right. We're nonpartisan. We're not Democrat, we're not Republican, right? We're Americans that will give our life to make sure that every American has a vote that is counted as cast. And so we have been collecting evidence. There's even more than this. But if you are interested in exactly everything that we have and what we actually are doing, because we can ask the auditors nicely. We can present these things that should be enough, right? Because the burden of proof is not on us. It is on them. They work for us. We have elected them to audit our elections. The title is within their name. So we ask nicely, we present this. If they refuse, and most have, then the case is to sue them to get an audit, right? That's what we're about to do in the next week or two in 3, possibly 4 counties. I would like, yes. Because like Amber said, she was talking about, well, judicially, if we don't have a recourse, right, we've got to do whatever we can that's available to us. So we asked, now we sue, and then the thing is, everyone here in different counties, I want to ask you, please, contact us either on email, because one of your counties might be the one we're filing suit in. I don't want to announce exactly which ones, because believe me, our enemies are at the back of our neck, right? So please contact us, and just know there is nothing that's going to stop those of us that have a fire in our belly and a resolve in our heart with God himself strengthening our backbone to be able to walk past any enemy and save our country, save our children, and save the principle and soul of the United States of America, liberty and freedom for all Americans. And forget about this left and right thing. It's a game. It's a game by those who rule us. Do not let them trick you with that. It's going to take every American to come together, and trust me, I used to be a Bernie supporter. I know, they know the elections are rigged because Bernie got stashed twice already. So please join me and join those. We can fight about every other policy in left and right, but the time now has come for us to come together with this one thing. And we will win if we do that. We thank you for your time. We will not stop until we have transparent, secure, and publicly verified elections. Thank you so much.
Tamborine Borrelli. Seth Keshel. Glen Morgan. Amber Krabach. Bill Bruch. We've had some great people here today to give you some information that is very helpful. We're about to end the program, but before we do, we've got a ton of questions from the audience. We want to address a few. We grabbed a few randomly. Representative Kraft, will you come up here and address a question?
Thank you. Thank you guys so much for sticking around. I know it's hot, it's been long, and we want to get you guys. Can we take just a moment to give a huge round of applause to Representative Robert Sutherland, who put this together for everybody? Thank you for doing this. Yeah, this is huge. I wanted to take a few minutes to try to address some questions, and I know we're only supposed to do one each, so I'm cheating a little, but I'm going to bust through this really quick. I can't stand it in Olympia when hundreds of you come out to testify, and the Democrats let like 20 testify, right, or whatever. So I just want to take some time to answer a few questions here, but most importantly, you've heard some websites and some presenters. Tamborine, thank you. I've not met her before, but I want to share with you a key website. Bill Bruch, who you heard from earlier, is working on this, and with some friends. If you want to know how you can stay involved in this effort moving ahead, please grab your pen, paper, or your phone. And tomorrow, you can go now, it's live, but tomorrow you'll be able to put in your contact information to be able to join this effort beyond tonight. It is waelectionintegrity.com, waelectionintegrity.com, and then we've been live streaming Representative Sutherland, Americans United and Determined to Improve Transparency Facebook page. So there's a couple more places to go to stay connected. Couple of questions real quick. Two of them. What is the reason this process is not opposed by other Republicans? I'm guessing they mean the elections process. And where is WSRP leadership? Both of those questions, I would say, I'm not sure, ask them. What can we, the average person do? I just mentioned a couple websites. Get involved. This is the beginning of a process. Somebody was asking earlier, what is this? What are we doing from here? When we went down to the Cyber Symposium this week with Mike Lindell, I sat down with Senator Wendy Rogers from Arizona, and I said, tell me, yeah, right? We got to hear from them. I asked her when I first got there, I said, talk to me about your process. What are some of the key pieces? Well, that ended up, several of us asked, so they did a presentation for everybody at the symposium, right? And they walked us through exactly what we're doing. This today, with a public hearing off-site, off-campus, is the first step they took. So we are on the right track. Great news. So again, thank you, Representative Sutherland. Okay, and now really quickly, so there were a couple of questions, a little more on the forensic side. Does the 22-month requirement for keeping election documents include digital imaging of all systems used? Yes, and actually, if you go to the federal code, USC Title 52, you will find that all records, all, digital, written, everything for elections must be kept for 22 months. So we'll find out if that is really being done. Has anyone looked at the adjudication process for each county? I'd say that's in process. Glen Morgan's done some of it. I think Bill Bruch. So that's in process. And then where are we at with auditing Washington elections? Well, here we are. There's some legislation being drafted by Representative Klippert. I have said at the Cyber Symposium publicly, I said I want two things. As a legislator, we need the forensic audit process, proper checklist, right? It's not going to be the same for every state, but that's what we essentially asked Arizona for. So that is being put together as an outcome of that symposium for legislators who were there. We're now part of the Election Integrity Caucus, as the legislators that were part of that symposium event. And the other thing was model legislation, right? So I went to a previous conference, ALEC conference, a few weeks before that, asked the same question, what model legislation is coming forth? I asked of the Arizona team. So it's going to be coming. I personally don't, we don't need to reinvent the wheel, right? Where there's people we know we can trust. I think Arizona certainly is one of those states, and they're doing that work. We want to use what works. So Wendy told me that they almost passed legislation last year, and one of the Republicans flipped at the last minute. So she thinks it will pass this year, and I would say those are some good places to start. So with that, I hope that answers some of your questions. Again, God bless you all for being here, and thank you for being involved and staying involved, because that's what it's going to take.
Representative McCaslin, will you come up here and answer a question? You're on the hot seat. The audience is asking us questions.
No, I think you guys are in the hot seat. It's kind of warm, isn't it? So I picked this question from Nicole, who's a healthcare worker, and it's something that doesn't have anything to do with election integrity, but I think it's important. She said, "How do people in healthcare fight the vaccine mandates from employers and on the state level?" So here's the thing. For everybody, it's going to be a little bit different. And I'll tell you that I will stand and fight for anybody who says, guess what? I'm not taking it. Absolutely, absolutely. And the thing is, I knew this real early on because I noticed they weren't keeping track of pre-existing conditions, acquired immunity, and all the information about the vaccines. So I think people have a strong place to stand against this. And plus, your employer, by HIPAA law, is not allowed to ask you, well, why won't you take it? Am I right? Absolutely. And I would bring that up, and Nicole, you could say, well, I'd hate to bring a lawyer into this, but that's kind of the direction we're going. I used to serve with 2 lawyers. Now we just have one left, Senator Mike Padden. But Matt Shea, I served with for the first 6 years of my life, and he was a great resource. And I would urge you to do the same thing. And please feel free to reach out to me if you want. I'm happy to, especially here in the off season, I've got way more time to answer emails and be able to help you. And we do get some from out of district, and that's absolutely fine. I want to let you know. So reach out to me, please. Thank you. Oh, McCaslin, MCCAS, as in Sam, LIN. Good Scottish name. Thank you. Absolutely. They're wrong. Absolutely. And I'm happy to stand with you on that. Absolutely. You are correct. 100%. Thank you. You bet.
Thank you, Representative McCaslin. Last but not least, I get emotional sometimes. Reverend, would you step up here, please? Pastor? We can't leave here today without thanking the pastor, DJ. Without the pastor, this event would not have happened. the lights, the people, the workers to set this up. The last several weeks, the man hours is unbelievable. We put this together in no time at all. Couldn't have been done without the pastor. Will you please, before you leave, go up to that little box right there and make a donation. Help him pay for this, for fighting for us. Who drove a long way to testify? Can you keep it to 1 minute? I have a hard time ending a meeting when they've driven so far to testify, and that was the whole purpose of this meeting. We're going to have a couple people. Keep it to a minute. Will you stick around, please, and I'll have some closing remarks when they're done. Go ahead. Say your thing. I'll keep.
My name's Tim Tooker. Like I said, I'm a PCO in Puyallup, 25th, 285th. I received a voter signature verification form, so I'm just going to talk. I don't know if my ballot counted for who I voted for. I know that election fraud has been happening in this state for a long time. To say that it hasn't is a lie. Does anybody remember Gregoire versus Rossi, right? So a lot of people remember it's been happening for a long time. The mainstream Republicans are not going to give us a forensic audit. We have to start taking back the party, which means you have to get in and be a PCO. And it's not just being a PCO, it's changing the bylaws so that way the party fits us. Now remember, you are at a very serious stage in this world. I believe we're in a Jacob moving to Israel type situation. Are you going to stand up and are you going to get a new name? God bless everybody.
Thank you for that.
Hi there. I'm from Lewis County. My name's Melinda. And after we were told to declare on the outside of our ballots, Republican or Democrat, my husband just put Republican, and I said, well, I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. So I thought, well, what the hell? I'll just mark Democrat. And now I get 2 ballots in the mail. So I kept this one. I'm going to give it to Tamborine because I didn't vote twice.
There's a lot of voter irregularities going on in Washington State, and we've heard just the tip of the iceberg today.
Hi, I'm Kevin Paulson. I'm from Lakewood. When I first moved out here, I lived in, what's the county south of? Thurston County, yes. And we did a tour of the facility there. I have a background in electronics. I study algorithms. I am not a programmer. I couldn't program my way out of a wet paper bag, but I can tell you whether a computer's working or not just by looking at the algorithms. So I've been studying this problem with this voting machine thing for about 30 years, ever since I graduated from college. We went down to the Thurston County counting rooms, and we did a tour. There was a gentleman sitting in the corner running a computer. I asked that gentleman, through the tour guide, the auditor, whether or not the machines were running on the GEMS program and whether or not they had a dedicated ground for the computer system to keep it secure. I don't care what anybody tells you, computers make mistakes, and it can be gotten through the power supply by driving positive or negative feedback through the power supply. So it can be manipulated through the power supply without a dedicated ground. I also asked him about the GEMS program. His response was to tell her to throw me out. That man needs to leave. That tells me I was over the target. All right, what I'm going to tell you We discussed the Ronald Reagan election, how he won Washington. Can anybody tell me what happened after Ronald Reagan won Washington in this state that changed? Do you know? The ES&S, the Dominion machines, and at that time the Diebold machines with Soros programming, the GEMS program. There is an extension in the GEMS program. It's called Fraction Magic. It was the precursor to Hammer and Scorecard. They've been stealing these elections since the 70s. This is where we got to stop it. This has got to be stopped now, and if we don't stop it, nobody will. And my grandchildren will grow up in a gulag. It's got to stop.
I know Jovan Pulitzer said cleaning up voter rolls isn't the answer. I just want to say that I read the Secretary of State's website. I've read the Pierce County Auditor's website where I live, and it says that they're obligated to coordinate their voter rolls with Supreme Court or the Superior Court records, the death records. They're to reconcile the voter rolls. Yet Kim Wyman in public says, no, that's the voter's responsibility to sign your affidavit that says you're not eligible or you're eligible to vote. Well, my son became ineligible to vote because he was sentenced in Superior Court. He is now serving time in Washington DOC system. He kept getting ballots for 2 years after he's incarcerated. I shred them and not use them. Well, in the 2020 election, he got another ballot. And I thought, okay, they are not working with the courthouse records and they're not reconciling their records. So we physically carried his unopened envelope to the auditor's office, declared him an ineligible voter. I showed my power of attorney papers and said, I'm his business representative. He is ineligible. This is the envelope that arrived for him for the August 3rd primary elections. Thank you, Kim. Yeah, so.
Okay, so I'm going to try and make this as quick as I can. It happened on Election Day. I was a 20-year resident on Whidbey, but life sent me to Minnesota for 3 years and was able to make it back here in September of 2020. I wasn't able to get a Washington ID or driver's license because of COVID. And while I was in Minnesota, I received an announcement saying that since I hadn't voted in the previous one, I would remain off the list or I could vote in Minnesota, but it was all a mess. So once I got back here, moved to Arlington, got online to see what my voter status was, and it said that I needed to register and vote in person on voting day. So I gathered all my documentation, the lease I signed for out here, an old Washington ID, a utility bill, and I went down. And when I walked, it was at a hotel. For one, I thought that was weird, but times have changed, I guess. So I walked in, there was a gal sitting right there. I told her what was going on. She sent me to another gal. There were like 4 of them. I was the only voter there. And I was telling her what was going on, and she just had me fill out a form and write in my Minnesota ID number. And then she printed out my vote and said I could go vote. And I said, do you need any proof of residency? She said, no, don't worry about it. So I went out into the hallway, because that's where they sent me, and did my vote. And as other people were showing up, they were also coming out into the hallway to do their vote. And a lot of them had 2 or 3 people there next to each other, or they brought a friend. Or I don't know who they were. So I thought that was weird. And then I went and put my vote, oh yeah, there was a security guy. I think it was a security guy. But I went and put my vote in the box, which was like a makeshift box, like Amazon box, had a little slit on top. And I cleared my voice to get his attention and said, "Do you want to watch me put this in there or something?" "Oh, no, you're good." Turned around and started talking to one of the workers again. So I left, and as I was leaving, there were people in the line who kind of saw this, and they were like, and I was like, and I left. So that's what happened on Election Day.
Not very secure, is it? Thank you for that.
Hi, my name is Shauna, and I've been very active in the state of Washington for the First Amendment and the Second Amendment. I've also been a PCO in the Republican Party. I don't consider myself a Republican any longer. I'm a constitutionalist. I'm a conservative. I'm sick of the parties, I'm sick of the division, but I'm asking every single person, even the liberals, even the Democratic Party, you need to come together with us. You need to figure out the truth here in our election system. It scares me to sit there and think that people are not paying attention. We need every single person in this room to get involved in the so-called Republican Party that is actually the Democratic Party. We need to start reaching out to our legislators in your district and hold their feet to the fire, because not one of my representatives is in this room tonight and bothered to show up. They didn't have time. I've been messaging them the entire time, and I'm not even getting a response because I worked on their campaigns in 2016 and 18 and stuff, and they're not here. We need to get busy, people, and use your voice. God gave you a voice. And as scary as it is, and as much as I'm probably going to get targeted again and be called a white supremacist and all these other things, I'm also a Christian. And I'm not going to be persecuted for something I believe in that this country was founded on. So let's get busy, people. Take your faith and make it work. Put your feet to your faith. Thank you.
Public testimony from our Washingtonians. It's powerful. I have a question, and if the cameramen can make sure that we get the audience on this, I would appreciate your participation. We've heard some amazing testimony, and believe me when I say that's only the tip of the iceberg. I countless hours, hundreds of hours I've been researching this. I'm a scientist, biochemist. That was my career. It's what I did. I analyze data. I've been analyzing this stuff since November 4th. I've seen a boatload, a mountain load of evidence. And we've seen a little bit, just a little bit tonight. But you know what? Even a little bit. Raise your hands if you have confidence in Washington State's election system. Raise your hands. Well, hold on. Where's the Everett Herald? Where's the Seattle Times? I know you guys were here. You hiding? Raise your hands if you have little to no confidence in the election system in Washington State. I've been in the Seattle Times and the Everett Herald the last couple of days. I looked online. I'm not sure if I'm on the front page or what. They love putting me on the, in their papers. You mentioned that you were afraid of being a target. I'm the king of targets here in Washington State. They had their say yesterday and the day before. Guess what? I've got the microphone now. They're claiming we don't have proof. Can I educate you guys, you press? Can I educate you on something? We have a mountain of evidence indicating voter irregularities and that something is wrong with our system. Do you know how we get proof? Mr. Press, Seattle Times, Everett Herald, do you know how we get proof? By doing a full forensic audit of our election system in Washington State. And that is what we're going to do. Do you stand with me? Because we're just a bunch of politicians yapping. Do you stand with us when we stick our necks out? We're fighting for our kids' future. We're not going to bend the knee. We're not going to quit. With you guys at our back, we're going to bring the fight to them. We're going to win. We're going to take back our state and our county and our country. We can't lose with you guys, but we need every one of you. Do you vow to stick with us? This is not the end. You all need to go home and understand this is the beginning. We have another hearing in 2 weeks up in Skagit County. Who knows how many we'll have after that? But the ultimate goal is we're going to bring the fight to them. We're going to demand either the Secretary of State, the legislature, citizens initiative. We'll bring the pressure on the government to have a full forensic audit so we can get to the bottom of it and stop. You say we don't have any proof. We're going to show you the proof once we get the audit. And what are you guys afraid of anyway? The press and the government. What are you afraid of? We just want to look at the ballots. We're not trying to prove anything. We're not trying to throw you in jail. Not yet. What are you afraid of? Why are you afraid of us just taking a look at the ballots? Let us verify how great a job you've all done. Why do they save ballots for 22 months? So we can take a look at them if there's a problem. And we say there's a problem, so we want to take a look at them. So this fight isn't over, ladies and gentlemen. This is the beginning. Hang in there. It's going to be a long journey. We're in Washington State. It's not going to be easy. Thank you for being here. Thank you for enduring the long meeting. I'll take full blame on that. I'm terrible at watching time. But we had to hear from our speakers. They were good speakers. Thank you for being here. God bless every one of you. And may God bless the United States of America. Thank you. We're going to be sticking.